Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the What If. Chapter 33, Date with a Dragon God. So, Loki failed. It seems that way, my lord. Well, that sucks. I knew he was going to fail, but I had at least hoped he would provide a little more entertainment before biting the dust, especially after all the help I gave him. He sat on a throne cast in shadow, in a room so large it looked like the entrance hall to a castle. Columns lined the interior, set on either side of a red carpet leading to his throne, which in turn sat on a raised dais, as if elevating him above everyone else. It had the appearance of those castles one would expect to find in a video game. In which case, that would probably make him the last boss. The thought amused him, though it left quickly as anger consumed his mind. That just goes to show you how incapable Loki was. Despite killing Odin for him, he still couldn't amount to much in the end. Rizvam Lucifer knelt before him. The devil, his goatee neatly trimmed, was dressed in his usual resplendent armor. His shoulder pauldrons with their numerous segments and glimmering chest plate made him seem more like a gallant knight than a resident of the underworld. Then again, devils were known for their ability to deceive. In either event, I have claimed a good deal of strength thanks to Naruto. He clenched his hands into fists as though testing his newfound strength. Of course he couldn't feel anything like this. However, deep beneath the surface of his skin, he could feel the power boiling within him like a cauldron. Chakra flowed through his coils that were once filled with little more than a trickle, just enough to keep him alive. It was like an overflowing fountain existed inside of him now. This power was rightfully his. This power which that fool Naruto had squandered. He would make much better use of it. Turning away from studying his own hand, he looked at Rizvam again. How goes your plan to revive all of the evil dragons? Rizvam cleared his throat. Thanks to your power, we were able to revive Grendel and Nihagr. We're currently working on reviving Crom Cruach now. After that, we'll revive Apophis, Yamada no Orochi, and Ladin in that order. It had been he who had allowed Rizvam to hasten his plans to revive the evil dragons. Thanks to the power he had been receiving, and thanks to this world itself, he had been able to revive them with ease. The idea to revive the evil dragons had been Rizvam's. He personally didn't care for their revival, but if it would get him one step closer toward what he wanted, then he would offer his aid. It wasn't like it would be at all difficult. Thanks to his newly awakened or perhaps newly taken power, thanks to the hatred engulfing this world, he had nearly limitless power at his command. And what of the hero faction? Have you found out what they are doing after they defected? We have. Rizvam looked up. It seems they are still trying to accomplish their original goal even though Ophis is no longer with them. So they are still searching for a way to free Samael. Should we take care of them? No. He shook his head. Leave them be. It doesn't matter to me what they do, and since Ophis is living with Naruto, their actions are bound to make things more difficult for him. I doubt he'll use Sage Mode again after what happened, but anything that can keep him from seeking me out right now is a good thing. While he was certain that he now held most of the power, the fact remained that Naruto was an extremely volatile variable not even he, the person who knew him best, could account for. The boy had proven time and time again that he could not be underestimated. What's more, he had felt Kurama's power coming from the boy, stronger than before. He was not certain he could defeat Naruto with Kurama helping him. I understand. Rizvam stood up. Then I shall continue with the preparations to revive the evil dragons and use Sephiroth Grawl to begin mass-producing them. It will take some time, but I imagine we'll be able to begin before the year is out. That's fine. Keep up the good work. He honestly didn't care about Rizvam's plans. Let the man do whatever he wanted. His only desire was to steal the rest of Naruto's power and kill the boy. That was the only goal he was working toward. There could only be one, after all. Devil Ninja. Ophis looked herself over in the mirror. She wasn't wearing a single stitch of clothing. Completely naked, she raised her hands and cupped her breasts, hefting them up several times as though to test their weight. Her height was back to her normal small size. Well, she may have added a few centimeters, but she wasn't the same height as Irina anymore. She was closer to Kaneko and Ravel. Similarly, she had made her boobs smaller. Now they were a B cup. To be more precise, they were exactly 79 centimeters. She had been trying to find the perfect appearance for her to take, one that would make Naruto find her sexually attractive. At the same time, she didn't want to just make him attracted to her from a sexual standpoint. She also wanted to be able to sit on his lap and have her head pat. In other words, she wanted the best of both worlds like what Kaneko had. The problem was that if she made herself too small, it caused her to look childish, which she had discovered did not actually turn Naruto on. The only girl in his harem who didn't have much in the way of a bust was Kaneko, but she seemed to be the exception rather than the rule. Rias, Ravel, Irina, they were all very well endowed. Nodding at her own reflection, Ophis then went to her dresser and selected a pair of underwear. Underwear was the most important item a girl could wear. It said so in the magazines she bought. According to the magazines, a person could easily tell what kind of woman someone was simply by looking at their panties. Ophis wanted to come across as sexy but adorable, and so, she stared at the numerous undergarments with an intense frown. There were a lot of different kinds. She'd gone shopping with Asia, Kaneko, and Ravel to get these panties. She had asked all of them for their opinions, though she mostly listened to Kaneko, who seemed to be less reserved than Asia and Ravel. Those two had spent almost as much time blushing as they had giving her advice. It was Kaneko who told her what Naruto would like, and from that advice, she had selected numerous undergarments. Everything from frilly and cute to lacy and racy was neatly folded inside of her dresser. Finally, she selected one that she thought Naruto would like. They were white and slightly frilly. The fabric would also grow translucent when they got wet. It was perfect. There, she stepped into them and slid them up her hips, and then wandered over to the closet, foregoing putting on a bra. She could have probably worn one, as her breasts were big enough, but bras were a bit too confining for her. She was used to only wearing tape over her nipples. As she studied the many outfits in her possession, Ophis carefully began working out which one would be the best to wear. It had to be perfect. After all, she had determined that today was the day she would get Naruto to take her out on a date. Devil Ninja. Although it was early in the morning, Naruto and Rias were wide awake as they sat in her office. The warm wood of the walls combined with the numerous bookshelves lined with books gave the place a studious feel, like something he would have expected in the house of an old philosopher with a goatee who liked smoking on a pipe. There weren't many decorations, but Rias preferred simple arrangements and wasn't really one for posh and lavish interiors. They weren't doing any paperwork right now. That was because they had already finished. There also wasn't much to do. Ever since they had all returned from Greece after that battle against the Greek pantheon and the three factions' leaders, the amount of work Rias had been required to complete dropped. Of course, it wasn't like she didn't have any work that she needed to attend to. All her standard workload remained, but that was the stuff she'd been doing since before Naruto even became a reincarnated devil. She got it done in record time. I received a missive from my brother, Rias said as she sat on the couch across from him, left leg crossed over her right, arms crossed. She was only wearing some negligee. The purple and slightly see-through outfit made it hard to stare at something besides her pink nipples, especially with the way her crossed arms were pushing them up. I'm guessing the situation with the Greek pantheon has finally been resolved. Asked Naruto as the door to their left opened to admit Akeno and Ravel. The two girls were dressed in regular outfits. Naruto took a moment to admire Ravel as her white skirt swished around her long legs. It was short enough that a spirited twirl would allow him to see her panties. Likewise, her red off-the-shoulder top displayed a hint of cleavage. There was a fold-over detail along the top, which somehow made her already large bust seem even more prominent. Long sleeves and a flirty peplum hem with pleated detailing finished the shirt. Rias-sama, Akeno said as she pushed a cart into the room. Here's some tea and snacks for you and Naruto. You're not calling me Kitsune-kun anymore, Naruto noticed as Akeno began setting out the fine china. She graced him with an even smile. I do not believe it is appropriate. Fair enough. He and Akeno had enjoyed joking back and forth on occasion, but he supposed that had changed at some point. In the end, Naruto shrugged it off. Their bond was through proxies like Rias and Issei. The two of them had never been that close. Thank you, Akeno, Ravel. Rias smiled at the two as they quickly and efficiently set out all of the china on the coffee table in front of her and Naruto. They added a third plate, which Naruto realized was for Revel when the girl sat right next to him. "You are welcome, Rias-sama." Akeno smiled as she left the room alone. "She seems to be doing better," Naruto observed. "She still misses being with Aiz." Rias sighed. "But all agree that she's gotten a lot better. Maybe at some point she'll even be ready to accept Aiz's feelings." The redhead bit her lip as the door clicked shut behind Akeno, sighed, and turned to present Revel with a smile. "Good morning, Revel. Not cooking breakfast this morning?" "No, I am," Revel responded with a shake of her head. "I am making French toast. However, I'm doing it differently than how I usually make it. I baked some braided bread last night and let it soak up all the egg and milk mixture overnight. It's currently baking in the oven right now." "Sounds delicious." Naruto wrapped an arm around Revel and pulled her close. The girl blushed from the roots of her hair to her neck, but she didn't resist and leaned her head against his shoulder. Please look forward to it. To answer your question, it does sound like the issue has been resolved." Rias got back to their original topic. Uncrossing her legs, she shifted in her seat, grabbed both the teacup and the small plate underneath it, and began sipping her tea. "I'm told Sirzex and the other faction leaders had to make reparations to the Greeks in order to appease them, but they were able to settle this dispute without any more violence. That's one weight lifted from our shoulders," Naruto muttered. About 1 week ago, the 3 faction alliance leaders had been controlled by Loki, Norse god of trickery, and attacked the Greek pantheon. This had been done to incite a war that would engulf the world. This plan was thwarted by none other than the numerous youngsters who had taken part in the raiding games that had been hosted in the underworld over the summer break. What's more, Loki himself had been killed by Ophis, so he would no longer be a problem. "Having Ophis on our side probably helps," Revel added. "The Greeks know we're not as strong as we used to be. I'm sure they would have demanded a lot more from us if it weren't for Ophis. Everyone knows she's living with Naruto-sama by now, and they fear that he'll unleash Ophis on them if they do anything drastic." Word had somehow spread that Ophis was living with Naruto, which was only natural, he guessed, as they hadn't made her presence in his house a secret. Of more importance was how everyone discovered that she was the one who killed Loki. Given everything that happened, Naruto would have expected most people to be paying more attention to what happened in Greece and less to what happened in Asgard. Then again, there were only a few people in the world who had the power to take on someone like Loki. Anyone could figure out who had done it if they looked at Naruto's allies and used the process of elimination. "That is true," Rias admitted as Revel leaned over, grabbed a small Danish, and began feeding it to Naruto. The Danish was light and flaky, while the filling on top contained a richly sweet flavor that melted on the tongue. "Having her around definitely helps, and don't eat too many of those. You won't have room for breakfast." "I always have room for more food," Naruto said as he polished off his third Danish. "What's going to happen now?" Rias shrugged as she set her tea down and grabbed a Danish. Naruto had decided to return the favor and was feeding Revel. He'd pulled the girl's legs across his lap and was stroking them as he fed her a Danish. Poor Revel's face was a blushing wreck, with steaming pouring from her head and everything, but she also wore a radiant smile as she timidly nibbled on the food Naruto offered her. "Now," Rias raised an eyebrow, "now, you have to get ready for the school trip." "School trip?" Naruto blinked. Rias and Revel stared at Naruto like he had said something extraordinarily dumb, like he'd suddenly sprouted buck teeth that had grown past his chin. He stared back, sweat forming on his head. Rias sighed. "The trip to Kyoto. You know, the one where you, Asia, Issei, Hiba, and Irina will be spending 4 days and 3 nights in away from us. It's coming up next week. Don't tell me you forgot about it." Naruto hadn't forgotten about it, but that's because he hadn't heard anything about it to begin with. No, wait. That wasn't quite true. He did remember hearing Irina say something about the school trip when he took her out to a cafe, but he had not realized it was a trip to Kyoto. He sighed. At least now he understood why Irina had been so excited. Naruto heard tell that Kyoto was quite possibly the greatest fount of ancient Japanese architecture and tradition in all of Japan. Revel sighed and placed a hand on her forehead. "Let me guess. You ditched class the day they announced the school trip." Maybe," Naruto admitted to the accompanying sighs of Rias and Revel. After discussing the matter of the Kyoto school trip, along with telling Naruto that he should do some shopping for supplies, the three made their way into the dining kitchen combo. Everyone else was already there. Asia was sitting beside Issei, while Kiba sat on Issei's other side. Gaspar was sitting as far from Kaneko as possible. Oddly enough, there were 2 spots on either side of her, which Naruto correctly assumed belonged to Ophis and Ravel. The head of the table was reserved for Rias. Rossweiss was on the other end of the table, and she blushed the moment they entered the room. Naruto took a spot between Kiba and Irina as Ravel sat on Kaneko's left. After Ravel took the French toast out of the oven and served it up, everyone began talking all at once. The many different conversations remained polite and didn't get too loud. Issei and Asia began talking about the school trip. Even Kiba and Irina joined in, leading Naruto to realize that he really was the only one who didn't know about the trip. That was really embarrassing actually. Maybe he should come into class every now and again. Heck, he should at least consider leaving a shadow clone. Akeno and Rias were talking about something school-related, while Kaneko was telling Ravel about a confectionery she wanted to take her to this weekend. Naruto joined their conversation since it sounded interesting. He was always down for trying new food, though he preferred ramen to sweets. It wasn't until several more minutes had passed that he realized something. "Where is Ophis?" he asked suddenly. Everyone stopped eating and looked at the empty seat. From the confused look in their eyes, it seemed they were also curious about their resident dragon god. They all glanced at each other, seemingly not sure how to answer him, or whether they even could answer him. Only Asia, Kaneko, and Ravel didn't look confused. "I'm sure she'll be down in just a minute," Kaneko said before stuffing a large bite of French toast into her mouth. "She if huff geffen refi." "Don't talk with your mouth full," Ravel sighed. As Kaneko swallowed her food, Naruto sent them both a confused glance. "Getting ready for what?" Before either of them could answer, Ophis walked into the room. She had once again changed her appearance. It was closer to her original lowly appearance, but she seemed a bit older. She was about the same height as Kaneko and Ravel, and her breasts were somewhere in between the two. Her spaghetti strap shirt hung from her lithe body. She wore black pants that stopped just below her butt. Her sandals clicked against the floor as she walked up to the table. She's even done her hair. Her hair was normally let down, flowing freely behind her back as bangs hovered in front of her face, but not today. This time her hair, tied into an artful series of braids, swished as she stopped in front of Naruto. He had to admit that her hair looked quite nice. Having it tied up like this meant her slender shoulders were on display. She was quite cute. Naruto. Yes. Naruto stopped eating to focus fully on Ophis. Something was different about her. There was a strange determination blazing in her normally dull eyes. "You are taking me on a date today." "Huh." Issei, Irina, and Rossweiss shouted in surprise, though none of the other girls aside from Irina seemed shocked by this. In fact, Rias kept eating as if nothing was happening, while Ravel and Kaneko were nodding several times. On a side note, Kaneko was still stuffing her face with Ravel's French toast. Even Akeno didn't seem very surprised by what Ophis just said. "I suppose I should have expected this." It wasn't like he hadn't been aware that Ophis was interested in him for reasons that weren't quite pure. She'd been party to a number of perverse scenarios with Ravel several times, and she'd been staring at the other girls' breasts and reading those magazines. He didn't know if she was in love with him or merely curious about reproduction, but he'd known that she was at least interested in him. "Sure," Naruto said, "I'll take you out on a date." Ophis smiled at him and went over to her seat by Kaneko, where she began piling French toast onto her plate. Naruto tried to ignore the looks he was given, the weirdly freaked out expression on Issei's face, the amused one from Kiba, the furtive glances from Irina, and the intense stare from a redder than a fire truck Rossweiss. As breakfast continued, Rias sighed. He was supposed to go shopping for his trip to Kyoto today. Devil Ninja. Naruto had changed into something more appropriate for a date. He thought his black pants matched his orange-collared shirt well. He'd even gone a step further and added an undershirt, leaving the last 2 buttons on top of his shirt unbuttoned. His blonde hair was as messy as always, but that was natural since it never stayed combed no matter what he did. He was walking hand in hand with Ophis as they made their way to the bus stop, where they planned to hop on a bus that would take them to Kuo City's main district. They could have walked, but going by bus sounded more date-like. Actually, wouldn't it have been more like a date if they met up at an assigned meeting spot? That was how most anime dates began. Well, that would have been too much a hassle. Do you have any idea what you would like to do on our date? Asked Naruto. Office shook her head. I do not know what dates entail outside of the fact that it's where a man and a woman who are mutually attracted to each other go out together. She paused, tilting her head from side to side as her eyes glazed over. I have read that most dates consist of shopping, a movie, and dinner. If the date goes well, then the couple will find a love hotel and begin getting busy. I'm not sure where you got your dating information, but that last part is incorrect. It is, usually. It was a beautiful day outside. The sky was a clear blue with very little clouds. Mild and warm weather meant there was no need for sweatshirts. Since it was the weekend, a lot of people were milling about today. They passed by a park that had several kids running around and playing. A young man walked a dog on the opposite side of the street. A pair of high school girls in casual clothes were giggling as they conversed about something. Naruto even spotted several couples, including a married couple who were clearly expecting a baby. That woman is pregnant, Office stated with a blunt casualness. Well, yes, Naruto said. At least, I hope so. I have heard that the process of making a baby is the same as sex, Office declared. First the man puts his dick into the woman's. I do not think that's appropriate to discuss in public like this. I am rather curious about the process myself. You're not even listening to me, are you? They arrived at the bus stop and waited for the bus to pick them up. While they did, Naruto spotted something out of the corner of his eye. He turned his head and saw the tail end of a cloak disappearing around a corner. Frowning, he wondered if the cloak would show up again, but when it didn't, he shrugged and decided that it must have been his imagination. The bus soon arrived, and he and Office boarded. Devil Ninja. That was too close. I can't believe you almost let yourself get caught. Hey, it wasn't my fault. Kaneko pushed me. Did not. Now, you two, please don't fight. Several people had decided to follow Naruto and Office as they went out on their date. Of course, these people were Rias, Ravel, Kaneko, Irina, and Rossweiss. The group of 5 were wearing mostly normal clothes. Only Ravel had elected to wear something that wasn't normal, though the large tan trench coat did do a decent job of hiding her features. Rias, Kaneko, and Irina only wore hats and sunglasses to keep people from seeing who they were. Their caps were large enough to cover most of their heads, so the chances of someone recognizing them on sight were slim. Naruto probably would, but they didn't plan on letting him see them at all. Come on, girls. Rossweiss tried to stop Ravel and Kaneko from arguing, though Irina and Rias knew it was futile. If we don't hurry and grab the next bus, we might lose them. Her words must have had magical properties because everyone turned to see Naruto and Office hopping onto a bus. Irina began walking toward the bus without thinking, no doubt to hop on, but Kaneko grabbed the back of her shirt to keep her from moving off. Hold it, we can't get on their bus. They'll discover us for sure. Oh, Irina rubbed her head with a sheepish smile. Right, I didn't think about that. Obviously not. Kaneko rolled her eyes. Their bus is taking off, Ravel said. Let's hurry to the stop and get on the next one. Kuo City wasn't a really big place. In fact, its population didn't exceed 25,000, making it one of the smaller cities in Japan. Because it wasn't very big, both in terms of population and in size, the buses all went to the same places like clockwork. What's more, buses appeared at 15-minute intervals, so hopping on the next one wouldn't take much time. Once the next bus arrived, they all sat at the front, the better to hop right off as soon as they reached their destination. Kaneko, Ravel, and Irina were all sitting together, while Rias sat next to Rossweiss. I'm curious to know why you decided to come with us, Rias said to Rossweiss as the bus began its 15-minute trip into the city. The other girls are easy to understand, but I didn't think you had feelings for Naruto like they do. Oh, me. Rossweiss turned away to look out the window, but Rias could see her expression in the reflection. Her face could have outshone a mage's fire spell. And no particular reason. I'm really just curious to see what a date would be like. After all, her expression darkened suddenly, becoming so depressed it looked like there was a rain cloud hovering around her head. It's not like I have any experience with dating. There were any number of things Rias could have said to that, but she chose not to. She placed an arm around the woman's shoulder and comforted her. That said, a plan did begin forming in her mind, but she would need to talk to Naruto about her idea to see what he thought about it. The bus ride felt longer than it should have been. Rias chalked that up to dealing with a depressed Rosweiss. When they got off, the group began searching for Naruto and Office, who were fortunately not hard to spot even in the busy crowd. After all, there was only one person in the entire world who had spiky blonde hair like that and wore orange clothing. There he is. Irina was the first to spot them, and she pointed. They just entered the theater. Let's follow them, Ravel said. I'm right behind you, Yakitori. As the two girls rushed off, Irina close behind, Rias sighed as she guided the still depressed Rosweiss into the theater. Devil Ninja. There were a lot of movies playing in the theater and neither he nor Office knew any of them. That was to be expected. Naruto didn't much care for movies and Office's only experience with movies was an offhand comment she'd heard about them almost 2 decades ago. The two of them stared at the movie posters with blank eyes. One of the posters looked like a romance movie, which Office expressed mild interest in but didn't seem enthusiastic about. It was a very stereotypical poster. The girl was being held in the guy's arms as they stood on a boat. It looked boring. What about that? Office pointed to a poster with a giant robot as the centerpiece. It didn't look anything like a Gundam, though, so Naruto thought it was just a normal mecha movie. The title of the movie was called Pacific Rim. You want to watch a movie about mecha? Asked Naruto. Office shrugged. I do not know. I have never seen a movie before, but, she tilted her head, I have watched anime with you and the others. This one reminds me of that Gungan series we watched. You mean Gundam? Naruto sighed. You're lucky Rias wasn't here to hear you say that. She'd have been pissed at you for getting it wrong. Would she? Yes, she would. Naruto suddenly felt a shiver crawl up his spine, but he couldn't for the life of him figure out why. He looked around. No one was there. Well, no one was paying attention to them. There were plenty of people, though. Deciding to see Pacific Rim, the pair walked hand in hand to the ticket booth. The woman behind the glass eyed the pair as they told her what movie they wanted to see. Naruto could almost see the accusatory glare behind the woman's fake smile as she handed them their tickets. No doubt she thought he was some kind of disgusting pedophile or something and Naruto couldn't even blame her. Office still looked young, regardless of whether she'd made herself slightly taller and grown her boobies out. Then again, he couldn't have looked that much older than Office himself, could he? She's a several bazillion-year-old dragon god but chose to have the body of a child. He'd never really understood that trope, but he also couldn't really say anything. Office was cute. No, she was fucking adorable. And now that she'd decided to make herself look a bit older, she'd gone from being merely cute to being cute and pretty. He did wish she'd stuck with her Irina height and bust size, but she said being smaller was more comfortable. Whatever. It's not like I care what random strangers think. They went to the concession stand. Naruto ordered one large bag of popcorn and a large Coke. After putting as much butter and salt on the popcorn as he dared, essentially lathering it in gooey goodness, the two made their way through the hallway on their left and entered the theater where their movie was playing. Despite having 2 tickets, they only used one seat since Office had decided his lap was better than any comfy chair ever could be. She wiggled her butt against his crotch as she adjusted herself. He didn't think she was doing it on purpose, so he tried not to let it bother him. Quite the bold dragon god. You're telling me. I wonder if she's a god in bed. Somehow. I doubt that. You shouldn't converse with the fox when you are on a date with me. Office turned around and stared into his eyes. Naruto blinked. How did you know I was talking to Kurama? I can just tell. See, sorry. Doing the only thing he could think of to placate her, Naruto began petting her head. He forced a smile. Her hair was lovely, but he couldn't run his fingers through it since it was braided. I promise, from now until the end of our date, I'll only pay attention to you. While her smile was small, it was still there. Good. Office settled back down, leaning against his chest to make herself comfortable. Naruto stopped petting her when she placed her head underneath his chin. He wrapped one arm around her stomach, then used the other to grab some popcorn, switching between feeding himself and feeding Ophis, who took each individual piece of popcorn into her mouth with a cute, chew, sound. Devil Ninja. N. Rias was grinding her teeth as she, Kaneko, Irina, Revel, and Rosweiss sat several seats above and behind Naruto and Ophis, looking down at the pair. The other girls leaned away from her as if she might bite their heads off. However, the redhead was not paying any attention to them. Her eyes were intently focused on drilling holes through Ophis's head. "I'm not sure I understand why she is so angry," Rosweiss said. "I thought she was perfectly okay with letting Naruto go on dates with other girls." "She is," Revel informed her with a nod. "That isn't the issue here." "Then what is?" asked Irina. Ophis called one of her favorite shows, Gungan. The answer came from Kaneko, who was munching on a bowl of popcorn covered in chocolate. "If there's one surefire way to piss our president off, then it's getting the names of anime mixed up." While Rosweiss looked back and forth between Kaneko and Rias like she couldn't understand, the others all sighed. Irina also finally got it. Rias was an anime nut. An otaku. Though maybe otaku wasn't the right word since she wasn't Japanese. Irina had once heard that non-Japanese people who love Japanese things were called Japanophiles. You would be angry too if you spent almost a month introducing someone to all your favorite shows and they got the name of one wrong. Rias turned her glare on them. "Ophis has been watching anime with me and Naruto for a while now, and this is one of my favorite franchises. How could she get the name wrong? It's unbelievable." Before she and Naruto started dating, Rias had never let anyone know about her obsession for anime, manga, and video games. It was a well-kept secret. From what Kaneko understood, only Akeno had possessed even an inkling about their king's taste in media. However, since becoming Naruto's girlfriend, she had been a lot more open. It probably had something to do with his acceptance of her favorite pastime. "And now that you mention it, I do remember seeing all of you getting cozy on the couch and watching cartoons," Rosweiss said. "Was that this Gundam thing?" Revel's drill-shaped locks of hair swayed along like a pendulum as she shook her head. "It might have been, but it was probably something else. None of us have watched Gundam in a long time. What did it look like?" While Revel spoke with Rosweiss, Irina and Kaneko began getting into the movie, currently playing a scene where a giant robot was fighting against some alien-looking thing. Kaneko offered her bowl to Irina, who grabbed a handful of popcorn and popped them into her mouth one by one. Meanwhile, Rias was still staring at Naruto and Ophis hard enough that everyone was surprised she hadn't lit the back of their heads on fire. Rosweiss crossed her arms and scrunched her nose in thought. I think there was a person with dog ears and silver hair, maybe, and there was a girl who kept telling him to sit. Inuyasha, Kaneko, Revel, and even Irina said at the same time. All the while, Rias kept her eyes locked onto her target. Devil Ninja. After watching the movie, which was corny but not all that bad, Naruto and Ophis left the theater and began walking around town. It was still early afternoon, so there was no need to eat something yet. That said, Naruto ended up traveling to a crepe stand and getting Ophis the sweetest crepes they had. As the little dragon god happily munched on her treat, they wandered across the sidewalks and looked into stores. "Humans have way too many things." "What do you mean?" "I mean they have a lot of useless stuff they don't need." Ophis glanced around some before pointing into the window of a shop. "Take a look at this store. It's filled with all kinds of different clothing, but really, how many types of clothing do people wear?" "What about that shop over there? It's one of those game stores, right? How many people are going to play all those games? Humans have finite lives. I believe most don't live past 80. It just seems like there's more to do than anyone will ever be able to do in their lifetime." Naruto didn't say anything at first as Ophis polished off her crepe and threw the wrapper away in a trash bin. He almost snorted as the idea of a recycling dragon god took hold in his head. Holding back that thought, he leaned over, causing Ophis to turn his head, and swiped some of the cream on her lips with his finger. He stuck it in his mouth, tasting the unique sweetness of the cream and nodding in approval. He wasn't a Sweats fan, but this was pretty good. It is true that humans have a lot of stuff they probably don't need. Naruto grabbed Ophis's hand and began walking again. The world I come from didn't have all these things either, but my world was also rife with war and chaos. There wasn't any time to really enjoy life like there is in this world. I think these games and clothes are being created because the people here can create them. Also, even if not everyone plays every game or tries on every outfit, that doesn't mean others won't. I suppose, Ophis admitted reluctantly. Naruto smiled. Well, how about we go ahead and try out some of those outfits you were complaining about earlier? Dragging the girl into the clothing store she had pointed out, Naruto wandered the aisles filled with racks and shelves that had clothes either hanging neatly in rows or folded on top of each other. There were a lot of different styles that Naruto was unfamiliar with. However, he'd gone shopping with Rias and Revel on a number of occasions. He wasn't completely unknowledgeable about such things. With Ophis's current height and body type, she would probably look better in something that was cuter than it was sexy. Naruto picked out several outfits he thought she'd look good in. After grabbing 3 outfits, he took her to the back room and told her to try them on. While Naruto waited for Ophis to get changed, he looked around the store. There were only a few other people inside. All of them were women, which made him the odd man out, so to speak. He sighed when a few glanced in his direction. Then, sensing something at the edge of his perception, he turned just in time to see something silver fluttering around a rack. A frown rose to his face, but it left when the curtains opened with a rustle. I've changed. Turning around, Naruto congratulated himself on his choice in clothing. The long-sleeved orange shirt looked incredibly cute on Ophis's slender frame, and the cutout where the head went through was larger than normal, meaning her collarbone and a bit of her shoulders were visible. It lent her an innocently seductive flair. It also helped that she no longer looked like a true loli. She was short, but she had boobs, meaning the shirt conformed to her new proportions well. The black shorts wrapping around her bottom were small, not even stopping at the halfway point of her thighs. Because her legs were so thin, the gap between her thighs was easily visible. About a third of her thigh length above the knee was the beginning point for her socks, which were orange with a black outline around the tops and bottoms. Of course, this was a cutout sock, so her toes and half of her feet were visible. Naruto clapped. You look really cute. Do you think so? Ophis looked down at herself. She wiggled her toes, shifted from foot to foot, then twirled around, her long hair, still trapped in a ponytail, swirling around her like a streamer. I do. You look amazing. Naruto peeled his lips back in a grin as he raised a hand and gave her a thumbs up. Even though there was no sunlight in the store, his teeth somehow sparkled. It came complete with a ping sound effect. You're super cute. If Rias was here, she'd definitely say you're Mo. I have no idea what that means. Ophis deadpanned. Then I'll teach you all about it later, but for now, how about you try on the last 2 outfits? Ophis did indeed try on the last 2 outfits, though in the end, both of them agreed that the first one he'd chosen was the best. Naruto bought it for her. They left the store, bag in one hand, Ophis's in the other, and traveled some more. On a whim, Naruto decided they should go to the aquarium. Kuo had a small one that was just a short bus hop away, near the train station. It wasn't very large, being located in a 3-story building, but as they traveled through the half-sphere tunnel, he smiled at seeing Ophis gaze at everything with unbridled curiosity. She may have been a dragon god who had lived for eons, but she hadn't experienced life. There was a difference between being alive and truly living. As they continued traveling from place to place, Naruto caught a glimpse of hair out of the corner of his eyes. Sometimes it would be red, other times blonde, silver, or even white. There were also the times where he felt someone's eyes on them. He frowned and ignored the feeling as he continued exploring the aquarium with Ophis, looking at all the fish and strange aquatic creatures. There are a lot of strange monsters lurking in the sea, huh? Ophis mumbled as she stared at the jellyfish drifting along through the water. I guess so. Naruto leaned over her and looked into the tank as well. I've never really studied the ocean myself. Did they have creatures like this where you live? Don't know. Naruto tilted his head. I've fought against plenty of strange monsters out at sea, but most of them were dangerous and deadly. These seem relatively harmless in comparison. I've never seen anything like it. Then it's a learning experience for us both. I suppose it is. They eventually left the aquarium, and Naruto decided it was time to bring their date to a close. Devil Ninja, where are they going now? The group that had been following them all asked the same question as Naruto and Office wandered off, deeper into the city, where the buildings were more congested. None of them had ever been this far into Kuo. There had never been any reason to. Still, they followed the duo as they wandered down an alley, which led to this is. Irina gasped, cheeks flushing bright red. Rias gawked. You don't think they? No. Rosweiss, blushing even brighter than Irina, shook her head. Absolutely not. There's no way. I mean, wouldn't Naruto get in trouble? The place where Naruto and Office had wandered into, which could only be accessed by traveling through the city proper and taking a turn into a rarely used street, was gaudy, bright, and filled with neon signs. Many of the signs hanging on the buildings had hearts and strange symbols. The buildings, ranging from 4 to 6 stories, looked innocuous, but those signs, with titles like Love Motel 6 and Hotel Passione, let anyone know what sort of place they had wandered into. This was the red light district. There aren't any laws against it, if that's what you mean, Rias said. Naruto and Office both look close enough in age that he wouldn't get arrested or whatever. Still, he'd definitely get strange looks if he brought a girl like Office into a place like that. It would be safer to do it at home. We should stop him, Ravel said. It's not fair if she gets to him before me. I mean, we need to protect his reputation. Very smooth, Yakitori, Kaneko muttered, though from the fire in her eyes, it looked like she agreed. The group quickly followed the pair as they wandered deeper into the red light district. They tried to remain as inconspicuous as possible, darting from cover to cover. They hid behind a trash can, a light pole, an alley. Naruto and Office didn't appear to have seen them yet. They kept walking, chatting about something. Naruto was doing most of the talking, but Office nodded along and occasionally added her own input. Several men and women coming out of a love hotel stared at the unusual duo, perhaps wondering what such a young pair of children were doing in this section of the city. Indeed, Naruto was only 17 years old, though most would assume he was older due to his muscular build. Meanwhile, Office only looked about 14 or 15 to the unknowing eye. Many scornful glances were cast at Naruto, who either ignored them or didn't even notice. Before too long, the pair had gone into a love hotel. It was a bit smaller than the other ones but still 3 stories tall. Windows lined the outside. The entrance was an automatic sliding door, and the gaudy sign decorating the outside hung above the entrance, flashing in neon colors. Come on. Rias picked up her pace. We have to stop them. Right. The others shouted. The group rushed into the lobby of the Love Hotel, looking around. Naruto and Office weren't there. There was just an older gentleman standing behind a counter. After a moment, Rias strode across the tiled floor and stopped in front of the man, slamming her hands on the black counter as she glared at the person. A pair of high schoolers came in here, she said. Where did they go? Love hotels like this had a customer confidentiality policy that kept them from talking about who came and went. This man was obviously aware of that. However, in spite of this, he decided to answer her. Ah, yes, so they were indeed high schoolers. I thought they looked a little young. They went up to room 306. Thank you. Rias led everyone to an elevator and stepped in, pressing the button that would take them to the 3rd floor. She crossed her arms, tapping her finger against her arm as she waited, wondering why the 10 seconds it should have taken to reach the 3rd floor felt like hours. Hey, didn't that man seem a little odd? Asked Rosweiss. Ravel looked at her. What do you mean? Normally, the person manning the front desk would have been a beautiful young woman, not an old man. Is that strange? Asked Irina. Yes. Beautiful women attract more customers. It makes the hotel seem more inviting and erotic. How do you know this? Asked a curious Kaneko. Well. Rosweiss blushed bright red as she clasped her hands and squirmed in place. I was Odin's secretary back in Asgard and, well, he often went to places like this, so. Ah, Odin was a perv bag. I see. Kaneko nodded several times. While Rias did find it unusual that an older man was manning the counter of a love hotel, she didn't think it all that strange. It wasn't like there was an unspoken rule stating a love hotel's receptionist had to be female. The doors opened with a soft ping. Rias and the others stepped out and wandered down the hall until they reached room 306. "What should we do?" asked Irina. "Knock." "I'm not sure they'll answer if we knock," Rosweiss muttered. "They might even try to make their escape if we do that. I'm sure Naruto and Office will figure out who we are once they know someone is at the door." "True," Rias muttered. "In that case," Kaneko cracked her knuckles and stepped in front of the door. "Stand back everyone." Rias, Irina, Ravel, and Rosweiss stood back as Kaneko hopped up and down several times, spun around, and then unleashed a powerful reverse heel kick. The door shattered. It was made of wood, so it naturally couldn't stand up to the attack from a rook like her. As shards flew across the interior, everyone rushed into the room. "Stop. Don't go any further. There. Hold on. You, too." Lit up by red lamps that cast an erotic glow on the walls and ceiling, the group stood in the middle of the room, staring at the two people lying on the bed in mid-coitus. The two people stared back. They looked quite shocked that a group of teenage girls had just barged into their room. "WWW, what the hell are you brats doing here?" the woman shrieked. "Get out," the man shouted, his face red with either shame or anger, or both. The two people on the bed were a man and a woman in their mid-30s or early 40s. They weren't in very good shape. The man looked worn and haggard from a life of long shifts and dubious working hours. He had quite a few gray hairs. Meanwhile, the woman had wrinkles lining her face and stress lines around her eyes that not even makeup could cover. They clearly weren't Naruto and Office. "Sorry to bother you," Rias shouted, face flushing with embarrassment as she ran out of the room, the others in tow. They rushed all the way down to the elevator and hopped inside. Once the door had closed and began descending, everyone breathed a soft sigh and wiped the sweat from their brows. That was not Naruto or Office," Irina muttered, her face, neck, and ears burning like a sun. "I think we just got played," Ravel muttered, also blushing. Rias didn't say anything, but she couldn't help but remember the old man at the counter and silently agreed. This was obviously a prank, and they had fallen for it hook, line, and sinker. Devil Ninja. The bus was quiet. Naruto and Office sat in the very back, in a small corner near the window. A glance outside revealed a world dyed red and orange. It was late afternoon. That meant it was almost dinner time. "I wonder if those girls liked our present," Naruto said with a chuckle. Of course Naruto had known someone was following them, and of course it had been easy to deduce who their followers were. He was honestly shocked they could think it was possible to outsneak a ninja. In either event, once their date had concluded, Naruto had led Office into a love hotel, transformed into an old man, and replaced the woman at the counter so he could fool Rias and the others into thinking they'd gone inside one of the rooms for some naughty fun. "Why did we do that again?" asked Office. "Because it was fun." Naruto glanced at the dragon god and raised an eyebrow. "Are you saying you didn't have fun?" Office tilted her head. "I do not know. Was that supposed to be fun?" "It was." After a moment of contemplation, Office nodded. "I suppose it was fun." "I'm glad." Smiling, Naruto and Office continued to converse as they rode the bus home. Devil Ninja. Naruto woke up on the day of the school trip within the warm and gentle embrace of three separate girls. Since he would not be seeing them for some time, Rias had invited Kaneko and Ravel into their bed. All three of them had been cuddled up to them, with Kaneko sleeping in between him and Rias, while Ravel spooned against his back. After a wonderful breakfast prepared by Ravel and Akino, the large group left their home and went their separate ways. Naruto stood with the others who would be going on this trip with him in a large waiting area covered by a ceiling with a ribbed ceiling and metal supports. Bullet trains came and went, with many people getting on and off. It was crowded, made all the more so because the entire second-year body was present, but they managed to find a place away from the others. Rias was the only one who had come to see them off. Akino, Kaneko, Ravel, and Gasper had wanted to come, but the first and third years had normal classes. Even Rias should have been in school. However, she said she had something important to give them and come along. Naruto was sure she just wanted to be with them until the very last second. "Here," she said, handing a small card to Naruto, Hiba, Issei, and Asia. Naruto looked at the reflective card, then at Rias. Noticing his curious gaze, she explained the cards. These are passes. Each of you needs one if you want to travel to Kyoto. I see. Kiba nodded several times. This is the free bus pass. Kyoto was a place heavily steeped in tradition, which meant there were many temples and shrines littering the historically rich city. This also meant the place was filled with spiritual power that would normally cause a number of problems for devils like them. After all, shrines and temples were taboo for their kind. What Rias handed to them were passes that allowed them to move freely despite this. From what Naruto understood, the passes were issued to them by Onmyoji and Yokai from the Kyoto office in charge of supernatural affairs. Akano, Sona, and I used these passes last year. As long as there is a legitimate reason, they will issue passes even to devils. Be sure to keep those in your skirt or a pocket on your uniform and you'll be able to enter all of the famous sites. Yay! Naruto raised his fist and cheered. I'm pretty pumped to see all the shrines and temples there. I thought you weren't interested in the history of this world, Kiba joked. I'm not, but visiting new places is always fun. After shamelessly admitting this, Naruto shrugged. I'm pretty excited to, Asia said with a soft smile. I've always wanted to visit more places in Japan. Issei touched her arm with a gentle look in his eyes. I'm glad you have the chance. Yes, Asia beamed. Me too. It's been a long time since I visited Kyoto. Irina's eyes were alight with excitement. I was just a kid the last time we went. What are you looking forward to seeing? Asked Naruto. I'm not sure. Irina frowned. My parents weren't too big on Kyoto because we're Christian, but I think I'm. Irina's cell phone suddenly started beeping. Excuse me. Let me take this. Irina held the phone to her ear and turned around. Asia, Issei, and Kiba bid Rias a farewell as they turned away and headed off, perhaps to give them some time alone. Naruto stared at Rias. His girlfriend was biting her lip, causing the softness of her lips to yield under the pressure of her teeth. It's been a while since we've been apart, Naruto said. Not since, well, not for a while. She didn't mention the time when Naruto had disappeared on her, back when he'd been kidnapped by the Chaos Brigade. It was a time neither of them wanted to remember. Thanks to his dumb decision to let himself get taken so he could learn more about the Chaos Brigade, Naruto had not been around during the incident with missing Excaliburs and Kokobile. Rias had been distraught. When he returned, she'd been so upset that she hadn't spoken to him at all. He didn't blame her. It had been a dumb move on his part, but now that they had gotten over it, neither of them wanted to be reminded of those trying times. Please be careful, Rias said at last. I will. Reaching out, Naruto gripped her hands in his. I promise. Rias stepped forward and leaned over, placing her head against his shoulder. She took a deep breath. Then, lifting her head, Rias leaned up and pressed their lips together. Naruto kissed back. Her lips were soft and pleasant, warm and wonderful. He wished this moment could have lasted, but she eventually pulled back. I feel a little guilty, she admitted. I got to see you all the way to the end, but Ravel and Kaneko couldn't leave school. I gave them a proper goodbye this morning, Naruto said in her defense, then sighed. But I understand what you mean. Be sure to take them out when you come back home. Naruto could not stop from smiling at her words, at the kindness in her tone and suggestion. How many girlfriends would tell him to take another girl out on a date? He supposed it depended on whether or not they were human. Even so, that Rias cared enough for the other girls that she was willing to let them be with him showed how kind and loving she was toward those two. I will. Naruto nodded. You and I will also have to go on a date when I get back home. Rias smiled at his words. Take care of yourself in Kyoto. Will do. After sharing one more kiss, which caused a strange surge of venomous glares to hit his back from the male second years, Naruto pulled back and went over to the others. It was time for the school trip to begin. Chapter 34. Misunderstandings. Roughly 10 minutes had passed since the bullet train left Tokyo Station. Naruto stared out the window, watching as the city flew past. Through his reflection in the window, he could see the frown that had appeared some time ago. The idea of traveling on a bullet train used to excite him, but now that he'd seen what they could do, he found himself slightly disappointed. Sure, these trains were fast. However, Naruto could run this fast without even relying on his chakra. That said, it wasn't like he didn't understand how useful trains were. The ability to transport large amounts of people and goods was invaluable. He recognized their usefulness, even if the hype had worn off. Trains were rare in the elemental nations. In fact, there were only a few nations that had the technology and power to create them. Yuki no Kuni, or rather, Haru no Kuni had been one. Dodo Kazuhana had been able to turn Yuki no Kuni into one of the most powerful nations with them. He would transport large amounts of supplies and materials to different parts of the country and build defensive weapons that acted as a powerful deterrent against other nations, not that it had helped him in the long run. "Are you okay, Naruto?" asked Irina. Naruto pulled his gaze away from the window to see Irina sitting next to him, gazing at him with concern. On the other side of Irina was Kiba. Like the young angel girl, the princely swordsman was staring at him with something like concern. "I'm fine," he told them with a wave of his hand. "I was just thinking about my home." "Your home? You mean the elemental nations?" asked Kiba, leaning forward so he could look at Naruto. Kiba was sitting on the aisle side of the train, Irina was in the middle, and Naruto had the window seat. "Yes." Nodding once, he gestured to the train. "The elemental nations isn't as technologically advanced as this world is. While we do have some technology like trains and computers, all of them are very behind the times and outdated compared to this world." "Your world was one of constant warfare, right?" Irina asked. "That's right. Our nations were always fighting each other for one reason or another. Even during times of peace, our nations spent it preparing for the next war. I think that's why technology is so stilted in my world. If it wasn't something that could be used to get an edge over an enemy nation, then no one thought about building it." "That seems so sad," Irina muttered. Naruto smiled. "You're a sweetheart, Irina. Don't worry too much, I'm sure my world has achieved peace by now." Before he'd been sent to this world, the four great nations had allied themselves with each other to fight against Akatsuki. He had no doubt they'd continued to remain allies after his departure. They had people like Gaara, Tsunade, and the Mizukage, so he was sure they wouldn't let their world go down the path of war again. Deciding to cut this topic off before it could become too depressing for Irina, who still looked on the verge of tears, Naruto brought out a deck of cards and asked if they wanted to play a game of Old Maid with him. The two of them quickly agreed. Old Maid was a game that didn't exist in Naruto's world. There were card games from his world, of course, but all of them required tables and couldn't be played on a train. They played for about an hour before making a unanimous decision to stop. Naruto won every game they played. Irina had actually asked him if he was cheating, but when he had her deal the cards and still won, she was forced to admit that he was just that lucky. After the final game's conclusion, the group decided to visit Issei in Asia. As they were making their way to the back, Naruto leaned into Irina. "Is everything okay?" he asked quietly. "You've been tense since boarding the train." He'd noticed it when they first boarded. Irina generally acted with calm and composed, unless she was extolling the virtues of being part of Michael's brave saints or praying to Michael, but ever since they sat down, her knee had been bouncing up and down. Most people would probably just assume she was anxious about the school trip. Naruto didn't. Irina wouldn't be feeling anxious about traveling to Kyoto for school. Even if she was excited about traveling, she would have shown it in a different manner, such as talking about all the places she wanted to visit. That she hadn't even mentioned what sights she would like to see told him that something else was bothering her. Irina stiffened as she turned to face him. She flushed a bit, likely due to the proximity of their faces, but she quickly shook her head. Well, it's not nothing, but I don't really want to talk about it right now. I'll tell you later. I'll hold you to that." They arrived in the train car that housed Issei's class. A number of squeals went up when the girls saw Kiba enter, though the enthusiasm of those squeals dropped off when they noticed where Kiba was heading. Is he going over to Kyoto? How can this be? No, Kiba, don't do it, you'll become tainted with that pervert's filthy germs. The very air that Lecher breathes is toxic, Kiba-kun. Naruto glanced at the girls pleading with Kiba not to sit by Issei, who looked about ready to cry himself. He snickered. The hatred these girls had for Issei was kind of amusing. Granted, Issei was still a pervert, but the boy had grown up quite a bit. Then again, he did still talk about breasts in public, so maybe it was only natural they would be adverse to him. Beside him, Irina sighed and rubbed her forehead. The girl probably still had trouble accepting that her best friend from childhood was so salacious. Issei and Asia were sitting together. While it was hard to tell they were a couple at first glance, Naruto only had to look at their entwined hands resting between them. They were being discreet about it. No doubt Issei was trying to protect Asia's image by not making it obvious that they were a couple. "Do you mind if we sit with you?" Kiba asked Issei. Issei looked at the three of them, and then shrugged. "Sure. What's up?" "Kiba, Irina, sensei." Naruto didn't think he'd ever get over how Issei called him sensei. He liked how it sounded. Yes, this was the kind of respect he had longed for back in the elemental nations. The seats in this car were different than the one his class had been sitting in, as not only were seats set in rows of 3, but 2 of those rows were facing each other, meaning 6 people could sit in a group. While Naruto and Kiba sat on the chairs opposite Issei and Asia, Irina sat right next to Asia. "Are you excited for the trip, Asia?" Irina asked. "Yes." Asia beamed a bright smile that could have broken apart storm clouds. "I'm really excited. This trip is going to be so much fun." As the two girls began talking about the school trip, Kiba looked at Issei. Since Naruto didn't get the window seat this time, he placed his hand on his armrest and leaned forward, closing his eyes for a moment to just soak in the vibes. "I thought it might be good if we knew each other's itinerary during the school trip," Kiba said. "That way we can create a plan in case there's an emergency." Issei's eyes lit up a bit. "Ah, that would be a good idea. Since we're in different classes, knowing where everyone plans on going would help us respond if something happens." "Where do you plan on going tomorrow?" "We're starting our tour from Sanjusanjin-do. How about you?" "We decided to start from the temple of Kiyomizu-dera, and then we're heading over to Ginkaku-ji and Kinkaku-ji. These temples are a bit distant from one another, but we're trying to finish visiting the most famous places in the first 2 days. That way we can take it easy on the 3rd day. We plan on visiting Tenyu-ji then." Naruto had been mostly listening into the conversation. He wasn't really concerned about coming up with a plan in the event that something happened, but he would admit it was a good idea. Given how much trouble they often found themselves in, it was always good to be careful, though Naruto was positive he could handle most situations on his own. He spent his time looking at the other students, noticing the lively expressions they wore as they chatted about all the places they wanted to see on this trip. Of course, he also spotted Matsuda and Motohama, who looked put out as they huddled in a place near the back. They seemed depressed about something. Naruto didn't care about to ask. "Isn't Tenryuji where our class is going on the 3rd day?" Naruto said. "It is." Kiba nodded as he smiled at Issei. "We may very well meet at the Togetsu Bridge. What is your class doing on the last day?" "Our class just plans on walking through Kyoto Station and buying souvenirs," Issei said. As the conversation continued traveling along this vein, Irina and Asia joined in, having finished their own discussion. Irina added that she wanted to visit the Kyoto Tower. While Asia didn't have anywhere she wanted to go specifically, she expressed her desire to experience as much of Kyoto as possible. The schedules for each class were prepared beforehand and given to the teachers. Students were also required to create travel guides for their own class to use. Naruto, of course, had one of those travel guides, but he hadn't even bothered looking at it, figuring he could just follow the crowd. Well, that, and he planned on replacing himself with a shadow clone to do some exploring on his own. His sense of adventure was brimming. As the conversation about where they would be going ended, a new conversation began. This time it wasn't about anything related to the human world. Rather, this conversation was about the underworld. Beelzebub-sama recently spoke to me about the compatibility between the characteristics of my pawn pieces and the Sekiryute's power, Issei was saying as he played with Asia's hand. Now that he had people blocking the view, he could freely hold her hand without the other students seeing. He said that I'm currently unable to unleash the full potential of the Queen promotion because I'm not handling my power properly. Since I can't control the flow of the Red Dragon's power, I end up wasting most of the Queen's potential. Being a fairy piece, Naruto did not have the ability of promotion like Issei did. He also didn't have the strength of a rook like Kaneko, the magical power of a bishop like Ravel, or the speed of a knight like Kiba. In fact, the fairy piece offered him no benefit whatsoever. That was just fine with him. Naruto didn't think he needed some extra enhancement or anything. He was awesome without any additional powers. Sounds like you have it rough, Kiba said in a sympathetic voice. That's not even the half of it, Issei lamented, leaning back in his seat as though exhausted. Never mind mastering the queen's abilities, I haven't even mastered the rook, knight, or bishop's powers. It's like, even when my speed and power are increased, all I can really do is charge straight ahead and rely on luck. Honestly, if it weren't for Sensei teaching me new ways to fight, I probably wouldn't have won even half the battles I've been in. At those words, everyone looked at Naruto, the sensei. He looked back at them and shrugged. I can't help him master the use of promotion. I barely even know how the evil peace system works. That being the case, all I can do is fight Issei with everything I have and force him to create countermeasures. This has led to him getting some more powers, Naruto added after a moment of thinking. However, even the new powers he's gained from fighting me won't help him master using promotion. Promotion was the system put in place that allowed pawns like Issei to promote themselves to another piece, thus gaining more power, but only after they had entered enemy territory or were given their king's permission. Since Naruto knew very little about this system, he couldn't help. The group grew quiet for a moment, perhaps thinking about their own desire to grow stronger. Issei wasn't the only one who wanted to become strong. Kiba had expressed a desire to be stronger than he was now, and so had Asia, though growing stronger for her meant gaining strength as a healer instead of a fighter. Beelzebub-sama said I should master the rook and the knight first, Issei continued after some time. He said that would be the best way to bring out the Sekiryute's power. Speaking of power, aren't we going to be fighting Saraorg and his peerage in a raiding game when we get back from Kyoto? Asked Naruto. Rias mentioned that the three factions' leaders were planning to restart the raiding games that got interrupted when Loki attacked us. That's right, Kiba nodded. Because of what happened with Lord Searzex and the other faction leaders, morale within the three factions is at an all-time low. A lot of people have lost confidence in them. Some of the people in the underworld are saying that if their supreme leaders can be controlled so easily, then it must mean they are unfit to rule. They plan on restarting the raiding games as a means of getting everyone's minds off the latest events. Of course, I believe they also plan on putting all of us, the groups who reacted without hesitation to rescue them, on a pedestal. So they're trying to hold us up as heroes. Basically. Naruto hummed as he realized what Azazel, Michael, and Sorich's plan probably was. Since faith in them was currently shattered, they wanted to present a group of people who members of the three factions could place their faith in. Naruto and the other young devils, angels, and fallen angels had saved Searzex, Michael, and Azazel at great personal risk. What's more, they had averted a war with the Greek pantheon. Those were achievements not just anyone could boast about. Pretty devious, he said at last. What did you expect? Asked Kiba, shrugging his shoulders in a helpless gesture. They need to do something, and while this is only a stopgap solution, it should buy them some time to rebuild faith in their leading abilities. Naruto couldn't disagree. When their conversation with Issei and Asia ended, Kiba, Irina, and Naruto wandered back into the car with their class and sat down. They talked for a bit longer, but eventually ran out of things to discuss. After that, Irina wandered over to chat with some of the girls in her class. Kiba didn't talk to any of the boys, but he quietly sipped a cafe latte he'd bought from the passing concession stand lady. Naruto wondered if the boy even realized the girls in their class were drooling over him as he sat there sipping his beverage like a prince. As for Naruto himself, well, he was having a conversation with his inner furry. I don't want to question your sanity, but I'm really questioning it right now. Are you sure this will work? Fairly sure. I've based the jutsu off the reverse summoning technique used by the toads of Mount Myoboku, though I guess you could say it's more like a combination of regular and reverse summoning. We've tried figuring out ways to use your powers without destroying our surroundings. Nothing has worked so far, and I believe the reason is that I just can't control your power. You're too strong. Maybe if I became stronger as a devil, it would be possible, but that's not something I can see happening for a while yet. Naruto and Kurama had been working together to figure out a way to use Kurama's immense power for some time now. The fact of the matter was that Kurama was just stronger than him. His own power had been steadily decreasing. Neither of them could figure out why. All they knew was that whenever Naruto entered Sage mode, his chakra had been flowing out of him and wasn't returning. They had tried tracking the flow of chakra, but that had turned out to be a bust. Whatever had stolen his power was also blocking their ability to follow it. It does seem sound enough, but that is only if it works, and in order for it to work, not only do you and I need to perfectly synchronize our hand seals, we also have to match our chakra wavelengths to each other. You know what will happen if we fail, don't you? You and I will be torn apart from the resulting explosion, and we'll probably take half the country with us. Naruto flinched as an image of Japan being blown to Kingdom Come entered his mind. Yes, that was exactly what would happen if they failed. Kurama's immense power would annihilate this little island nation. I know what will happen if we fail. You don't need to remind me. However, I also know that you and I need to do something. I hate to admit it, but until we can figure out what's happening to my chakra, we can no longer rely on my power when the going gets tough. If an opponent stronger than me shows up right now, we'll have to rely on you. Ha, you do bring up a good point, but let us hope it doesn't come to that. Believe me, I am praying we don't actually have to use this jutsu as much as you are, Naruto said to his companion. Outside, the train continued racing across the tracks. Devil Ninja, we will be arriving in Kyoto shortly, a voice announced over the speaker system, jolting Naruto out of his light sleep. He rubbed his eyes a bit and let out a wide yawn, but then he paused upon feeling something leaning against his shoulder. Looking down, Naruto found Irina using his shoulder as a pillow. Not only was her head on his shoulder, but her body was slightly pressed into his side, meaning he could feel the swell of her breasts on his arm. While her boobs weren't as big as Rias's, she still had a very nice pair. They were hard to ignore. Irina, wake up, we've arrived. Z's, HNN, Wazat. Irina stirred as Naruto shook her shoulder and opened her eyes, blinking several times. Upon waking up a bit more, she looked at him, frowning a bit as she brought her face closer to his. It took her a moment to grasp their situation, but once she realized what position they were in, she squealed and jerked away. I'm sorry. Why are you apologizing? Naruto asked. I don't mind being your pillow. In fact, I'd say it was rather nice. Oh, thank you. Irina flushed and looked away. Naruto chuckled. For someone with such a vivacious body, Irina sure was cute. Kiba just looked at the two of them and shook his head. Once the train had stopped, everyone grabbed their luggage and exited, stepping onto the Kyoto train station platform. Naruto took a moment to admire the massive train station. He wouldn't say the station was as big as the one in Tokyo, but it was pretty huge. Not only were there thousands of people wandering around, but he saw numerous places to eat and shop, and the Kyoto station roof was even covered by a gigantic atrium. Numerous escalators and elevators dotted the interior space, leading to another floor. It was all very modern. This place is amazing, Irina muttered as she clasped her hands together. She had stars in her eyes. I'd love to build a spectacular railway like this in heaven. Is that one of your dreams? Asked Naruto. Well, not really. Irina gave an embarrassed laugh as she rubbed the back of her head. I just think it would be nice if there was something like this in heaven. Don't you think a train station would be convenient? Well, yeah, I guess it would, huh? While Naruto and Irina were talking, Kiba traveled to the head of the procession and clapped his hands together, getting everyone's attention. He was the coordinator for their class. It was his job to keep everyone on track. Okay, everyone, our meeting point is on the ground floor lobby of our hotel. Let's not dawdle around here and begin heading there now. If we don't get there quickly, we won't have time for free activities this afternoon. Yes, Kiba-kun. All the girls squealed while the boys grumbled in complaint. Everyone followed Kiba out of the station. Now that he wasn't walking alongside Naruto and Irina, both of whom were intimidating in their own way, the girls of their class were crowding around him like a pride of hungry lionesses. Perhaps due to his ability to keep calm, or maybe because he was just used to their affectionate gestures, Kiba responded to the ladies with a smile. No matter what they said or did, he spoke kind words to them that made all the girls squeal. He also ignored the killing intent coming from the boys. Kiba-kun sure is popular, huh? Asked Irina. Yeah, Naruto nodded. That's why they call him the Prince of Ku Academy. Upon leaving Kyoto Station, Naruto was surprised to find what appeared to be a completely modern Japanese city waiting for them. He hadn't been sure what to expect. That said, he did have some expectations. He'd been under the impression that Kyoto was a traditional city, so he'd been expecting more ancient Japanese structures right off the bat, like temples and stuff. As he and Irina followed Kiba through the crowds of people, he knew that massive, modern-day buildings and people dressed in business suits had not been within his expectations at all. Look, Naruto. Irina pointed at something in the distance. It's the Kyoto Tower. Naruto looked over to see the fabled Kyoto Tower, which stood far above all the other buildings. Resting on top of a structure shaped like an inverted cylinder, the tower had a bit of an odd shape to it. There was something like a donut going around it, neat donut-shaped construct. She and Asia had been talking about going inside it on their last day. The hotel was only a few minutes' walk from the train station. Aside from their class, Naruto also saw Issei's class and several other classes walking in the same direction. He could easily tell who they were by their winter uniforms. Oh pie! As they were walking, everyone stopped upon hearing the scream. It wasn't just the scream itself that stopped them. It was the word that was screamed. What are you people looking at? It wasn't me. Issei's shout could be heard somewhere ahead of them. Ah! Get away from me, you pervert! Oh pie! Oh pie! Oh pie! The commotion was not from Issei at all, and in fact, it was happening several meters away. A young woman was backing away from a man who was chasing her. The man had the look of a zombie. His hands were raised and he was making creepy grasping motions with his fingers. A couple of passers-by quickly restrained the man, but he continued to mumble about Opie. A pair of police officers quickly arrived on the scene. They cuffed the man and dragged him off. He was still mumbling about Opie when they left. What was all that about? Asked Irina as the Kuo Academy students began moving once again. No idea, Naruto muttered, though he did feel there was something familiar in how that man had acted. I guess Kyoto isn't as peaceful as we all assumed. I guess not. The hotel that they were staying at was called the Kyoto Sirzex Hotel. It was tall even by most hotel standards, with at least 12 stories and a ritzy appearance that reminded him of the mansions he'd stayed at with Rias. He'd expected nothing less from a hotel owned and operated by the Grimori clan. On a side note, the Kyoto Serifal Hotel was under construction just a few buildings away. After the students showed their identification cards to the attendants, everyone was given detailed instructions on how to reach the lobby. The front door was actually just a waiting area and not the lobby itself. However, even the waiting area was ostentatious beyond anything that could be expected from a normal hotel. As the other students gawked at the busts, artwork, and polished to a shine-tiled floor, Naruto, Kiba, and Irina kept their eyes ahead and entered the lobby. A lot of students were already gathered in the lobby, which was about twice the size of the waiting area. When each class arrived, they took roll call to confirm that everyone was present, and then stood or sat around so they could listen to the teacher's announcements. As Naruto stood beside Irina and Kiba, he found Azazel and Rossweiss discussing something among themselves, though they soon stopped when it became Rossweiss's turn to talk. Everyone, there is a 100-yen shop in the underground shopping center in Kyoto. If you need anything, please do not hesitate to go there. I know a lot of you don't think so, but you can never be too careful with your money these days. If you become the kind of person who spends a lot in your youth, you'll grow up to become an unreliable adult. Money makes the world go round, as they say. That is why I recommend buying any essentials at the 100-yen shop. Naruto had known about Rossweiss's strange spending habits, as they had discussed the numerous 100-yen shops around Ku, and he had even joined her when she shopped on occasion. Even so, he felt like she might have been going a bit overboard with that speech of hers. Well, whatever, so long as it made her happy, he guessed it was fine. As she finished her speech, another teacher came up and made some final announcements. After putting away your luggage, you will be free to do whatever you want until 5 p.m., but please don't wander too far from the hotel. Stick to the area around the Kyoto railway station and make sure you're back in your rooms by 5:30. All of the students announced that they understood. That said, it wasn't certain that any of them would listen to the teacher's orders. After receiving their keys from the lobby attendants, the students began filing out to locate their rooms. Naruto and Kiba were sharing a room, which, like most rooms in this hotel, was a Western-style room with 2 queen-sized beds. Given that he wouldn't be sleeping with anyone on this trip, the size was more than adequate. Not only were the beds large and comfortable, but the decor of the room was tasteful. As he looked at some of the art hanging from the wall in their room, Naruto thought he saw Graphia's unique taste on display. I wonder if she had a hand in designing these rooms. He still wouldn't say he knew Graphia very well, but deciding to personally choose the decorations for a hotel owned by Searsex sounded like something she would do. She'd probably say something like, "It's the duty of a maid to ensure her master's business has adequate decoration." Naruto set his luggage by the bed and put his clothes, toiletries, and other necessities away alongside Kiba. The two of them talked while working to make the time go by faster. That said, they mostly talked about swords and training. Even though they were on a school trip, the two of them had no intention of neglecting their training. "Now that we're packed up, I think we should meet with Irina and the others," Kiba said. Naruto nodded. "Since it's free time today, we should be able to hang out Aiz and Asia as well. Let's go find them once we meet up with Irina." "Definitely. It will be a lot more fun if we're in a big group." Kiba agreed with a smile. As they left the room, Naruto couldn't help but grin. Their Kyoto school trip was finally about to begin. Devil Ninja, Naruto, Kiba, and Irina hooked up with Issei, Asia, Kiryu, Matsuda, and Motohama after getting everything unpacked. Then they hopped onto a train. They were going from Kyoto Station to Inari Station, which was just one stop. Naruto felt they could have walked, but no one else wanted to walk around like he did. "Can you believe it, Sensei? They gave me a crappy little tatami room that's barely large enough to fit a single person inside," Issei complained as he sat next to Naruto and Kiba. "I mean, I understand that it's so we can have meetings without worrying about other people coming in and finding out about devils, but I really wanted to get a nice room like everyone else." The girls were all sitting together as they looked out the window. Motohama and Matsuda were snapping pictures of anything and everything. Naruto was just glad the two of them weren't trying to perv on women, but he guessed they were the kind of perverts who only watched porn and talked about perving in loud, raucous voices. Well, they also peeped, but aside from that they were harmless. "That's just the way things worked out," Kiba said to Issei's complaint. "I think the original plan was for Naruto to have his own room, but Naruto is in my class now, so he and I are sharing a room to avoid someone accidentally stumbling upon the fact that we're devils." "Yeah, I know," Issei sighed. "I just really wanted to share a room with Asia." "Understandable," Kiba nodded. The train soon stopped and everyone disembarked. As they exited the train, Naruto looked around and found the road leading to Fushimi Inari. A loud thumping echoed inside of him, causing Naruto to grin. "You seem excited. HMPH. These humans are worshipping a fox god. They have good taste." This particular part of Kyoto was split by a canal running through it. To reach the Inari shrine, they would have to cross over the canal and head toward the massive red torii that marked the shrine entrance. Irina, look at these cute fox plushies. Ah, they're so adorable. They remind me of Naruto. At least if they could get Irina and Asia away from the numerous shops lining the street around the station. There were quite a few of them. What's more, it seemed that because this area held the shrine dedicated to Inari, their primary merchandise were various fox toys. Naruto could even see several figures of sexy anime foxgirls in a store window. Rias would love those. He, this is great. The two beauties enjoying the sights and sounds of Kyoto in all its splendor. I must get a picture of this. Matsuda grinned lecherously as he began snapping photos of the two. Naruto frowned a bit. He didn't like the idea of this man having Irina's photo, or photos of his little sister Asia's, for that matter, but neither of them seemed to mind, so he let it go. Standing disgruntled off to the side, Kiryu narrowed her eyes. "What about me? You're ugly, so there's no way I'm snapping photos of Yugia." Naruto could only shake his head when Kiryu stomped on Matsuda's foot and stormed off. The perverted trio member nearly dropped his camera thanks to her, though he saved it at the last moment with some impressive juggling. "Come on, you two," Naruto called out to Asia and Irina. We're gonna see the shrine coming, Asia called out as she and Irina left the shops and moved over to them. Located in a section of Kyoto that was canopied by trees, Fushimi Inari was marked by thousands of red torii gates. As Naruto walked through the gates with everyone else, he couldn't help but notice the strange hum that came from all around them. It was different from nature chakra used by Sage Mode. However, there was a natural energy permeating this place that he'd never felt anywhere else. It must be the energy from the god enshrined here. Inari is a powerful god of the Japanese religion, right? According to some of the research I've done, Inari is the god of foxes, fertility, rice, sake, agriculture, industry, and general prosperity and worldly success. He seems to be a pretty big deal. That's probably why. They continued traveling through the numerous torii, which didn't just move in a straight or even curved line. Dozens of stairs also dotted their path. This shrine was actually on a mountain, which they were aiming to climb. Irina was walking beside him along with Kiba. She looked around, staring in awe at all the torii they were passing. Ahead of them were Issei and Asia. The two were walking hand in hand, much to the anger of Matsuda and Motohama, who looked like they wanted to get between the pair. Hiru also seemed somewhat dissatisfied, but she was smart enough to keep such feelings to herself. Is it just me, or does it feel like we're being watched? Asked Naruto. I thought that went without saying, Kiba said. Devils and angels like us are considered threatening existences to the religious deities here. If we were to cause trouble for them, it could lead to war breaking out between our two factions. Of course, we notified them beforehand that we'd be coming and got those passes to let us enter, but they still need to watch us and make sure we don't cause any trouble. Yeah, I guess. Naruto glanced at a small section of the forest where he'd felt the presence of someone. He didn't feel it anymore, but he could have sworn that presence was hostile. Taking photos as they continued to advance, the group climbed up the mountain path through thousands of torii. Hey, why are you all so energetic? Asked an out-of-breath Motohama as he lumbered up the steps like a man dying of exhaustion. Hey, Motohama. Why are you so out of shape? Even Asia isn't breathless like you are. Unlike Motohama, Matsuda was actually in decent shape, so he didn't appear to be having much trouble. Naruto heard from Issei that Matsuda was a former baseball star in middle school. I guess some people really are the kind who spend so much time indoors they're completely out of shape, Naruto murmured. There were several rest stops along the way, so they took several breaks and checked out the little stores that sat in those areas. Sadly, they were forced to stick together. Naruto frowned as he realized that talking to Irina about whatever was bothering her wouldn't be possible in this group. He'd been hoping to get some time alone so he could speak to her in private. Aside from forest, the place surrounding Fushimi Inari was littered with cultivated gardens and small ponds. The scenery gave the mountain a very peaceful air. Naruto imagined normal humans would feel completely at peace while traveling through here, unlike him. The very atmosphere was alive with energy, so much so that Naruto felt the hair on his arms prickle. They eventually reached the top of Inari Mountain. By that point, Motohama looked like a dead man walking. Naruto thought he would keel over at any moment. Oh, wow, Irina muttered under breath. What an amazing view. It's beautiful, Asia agreed. The two girls were standing on an overlook that gave them a view of pretty much the entire mountainside. From where they stood, it was possible to see all of the torii gates lining the path. Naruto had to admit that it was a stellar view. The torii gates wound through the trees like a red serpent, or maybe even like the red tails of a fox, presenting a startling contrast to the green of the forest. Kiba was sitting on a small bench as he admired the view as well. As the soft breeze rustled his blonde hair, Naruto gave an amused snort as he thought about all the girls who would have happily committed murder to see their prince looking like that. There was an old shrine at the very summit of the mountain. Naruto left the girls to viewing the mountainside and stood before the shrine, which appeared as little more than a slightly antiquated but well-maintained building barely large enough to fit a handful of people inside. He clapped his hands together, paying his respects to the god enshrined there. Do you think it's weird that a devil with a fox sealed inside of his belly is praying to a fox god? Yes, but since when have you ever not been weird? Good point. As Naruto was paying his respects, Issei clapped his hands next to him and bowed his head in reverence. Let me see and touch breasts all the time. Help me do more erotic things to Asia. Also, please help Akano accept herself so I can do erotic things to her as well. Or maybe not. You know, Naruto began with an amused smile. I don't think Inari is going to help you do erotic things with girls. But you never know unless you try. Inari is the god of fertility, right? Fertility means making babies, and making babies means sex. He's the only god I can pray to about this, Issei said with a fire in his eyes. Naruto had to admire the boy's tenacity. Moments like this made Issei seem like Naruto's reincarnated sensei. Naruto shook his head and was about to head over to Kiba, but just as he was preparing to leave, a voice spoke up. Are you not from Kyoto? Judging from the timbre, pitch, and tone of the voice, it belonged to a young girl. However, beyond the sound of the voice, the strangely hostile feelings emanating from it made him frown. What's more, he could now detect numerous presences surrounding them. They must have hidden themselves. He didn't know how many there were, and they weren't very strong, but that hardly mattered when they were surrounded by so many people they couldn't afford to fight back. Keeping calm, Naruto turned around. He was prepared for any eventuality, or so he thought. When he finished his turn and found a girl with lustrous hair like honey and golden eyes, he froze like a popsicle. She looked very young. He would have judged her to be a girl in primary school. Adorning her slender frame was a traditional red and white shrine maiden outfit. Beyond the insanely cute outfit, however, were the furry fox ears twitching on her head and the 9 tails behind her back. Kurama, there's a cute girl with fox ears standing before me. Oh, God. This isn't good. She might be even cuter than Ophis. Naruto, just calm down and think about where you are. If you begin petting her, people are going to think you're a pedophile. Despite his partner's warnings, Naruto couldn't find it in himself to resist the strange compulsion that came over him. You're so adorable. Wah. Kya. Before the poor girl even had time to stumble back, he was right next to her, feeling those super fluffy ears. They were so soft. He didn't know what she did to make her fur so soft, but her ears were quite possible the softest, fluffiest things he had ever felt. Wait, what are you? You have really pretty ears, Naruto complimented as he shamelessly rubbed her ears. A bright blush sprang to the kid's face as her tails writhed in agitation, but he only paid enough attention to notice it and nothing more. There were more important things to do. Sensei, Issei muttered. Your actions are kinda making me uncomfortable. Naruto ignored Issei as well. His student obviously didn't understand the appeal of fox ears on such a cute kid. Sadly, before he had the chance to truly admire the softness of those ears, a surge of killing intent forced him to leap backwards, away from the girl. The person who had interrupted him was a man with black wings and a crow head. He was dressed like a hermit, with a loose-fitting gray kimono covering his body. How dare you defile Kuno-sama? Defile. Naruto frowned at the man, even as other figures emerged from the surrounding forest. I have no idea what you are talking about. I didn't defile her. I just wanted to feel her fluffy ears. Heathen, you dare to touch our princess with your filthy hands. By this point in time, there were more people than just the young girl and the hermit-like man, who Naruto belatedly realized was a Tengu. There were also nearly a dozen people wearing fox masks and dressed in the garb of traditional priests. Not only were they surrounding him and Issei, but they were also surrounding Kiba, and Irina and Asia. Oddly enough, Motohama, Matsuda, and Kiryu seemed completely unaware of what was happening. Naruto suspected illusions were somehow involved. What is going on here? Are those Karasu Tengu? Have they come to tell me my breast-related wish is forbidden? Issei asked in an increasingly shrill voice. Somehow, I don't think that's why they are here, Naruto muttered as he eyed the numerous hostile people. The girl seemed to have recovered from Naruto's sudden head petting, though her cheeks were still flushed a bright red. She patted her clothes and ears as though to calm herself. Then, recovering further, she pointed at the two of them and glared as she yelled at them. Give me back my mother. What? Naruto had no time to ponder the girl's words as the first Tengu who had interrupted his petting leapt at him. Clicking his tongue, Naruto blocked the staff in the Tengu's hand, and then promptly snapped the staff in two before kicking the man. He meant for it to be a light kick, but he must not have been holding his strength back as much as he'd hoped. The man went flying through the air and slammed into the ground several meters away. As more Tengu and those fox priests attacked, Naruto tried to reason with the girl. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't even know who your mother is. Please stop this so we can talk things out. But the girl didn't listen. Don't think you can lie to me. I might be young, but that doesn't mean I can be deceived so easily. TCH. As Naruto and Issei found themselves beset by Tengu and fox priests on all sides, the other members of their group, aside from Motohama, Matsuda, and Kiryu, who were staring at nothing with dead eyes, found themselves being attacked as well. Kiba was fighting against a group of priests using a wooden sword instead of actual blades. He used his incredible speed to move around them. His sword flashed out and attacked from all sides, but Naruto noticed that he was careful not to actually injure anyone. It seemed that, like him, he had realized something was up. Asia was standing behind Irina, who had brought out a wooden sword and even had her white angel wings flaring behind her back. Unlike Kiba, who moved around without pause, she stood in one place like a rock and took the attacks head-on. She must have improved her game since the last battle. Her movements were fluid like water as she deflected the dozens of staffs she was being attacked with. Asia, Issei called. Can you bring out the thing you received from Bucho? Why yes, it's right here, Asia said as she fished in her jacket and pulled out a card with the Grimoire clan crest etched into it. I'll clear you a path, Naruto said as he darted forward. Several foxes tried to intervene, clearly sensing that something was up, but Naruto used a gentler form of combat to trip them up and send them tumbling along the ground. He hoped they weren't too injured. He helped protect Asia as she made her way to Issei. All right, Issei grinned. Here we go, knight promotion. A surge of power swirled around Issei as he was promoted to a knight. Explosion. His power was further boosted by his sacred gear. This would allow him to overpower anything that came his way, though Naruto felt the promotion was unnecessary. These people weren't that strong. As all this was happening, the young girl shivered in rage as she glared at them. You people are unforgivable. You filthy devils. How dare you taint this sacred space? I'll never forgive you. Naruto sighed as the girl left them no chances to have a peaceful conversation. He ducked underneath the swinging staff, redirected the offending weapon so it struck the ground, and then stomped on it. Snap! The staff broke in half. As the woman on the other end stared at the broken staff in shock, her fox ears twitching, Naruto kicked her away with a love tap. It was just a light kick. Even so, she tumbled along the ground as though he'd hit her with an iron weight. Everyone, he called out, be careful not to harm them. We have no idea what's going on. Right, everyone else agreed. Naruto didn't want to injure or kill these people until he knew they were enemies for sure. That girl had screamed something about her mother. Give my mother back, she had said. This already gave Naruto some clues as to what was going on, but he still didn't have the whole picture. There was also the fact that Rias had warned them about causing trouble in Kyoto. The girl must have realized they'd lost the upper hand, or rather, that they had never had the upper hand to begin with. Several of her companions were already lying on the ground and sporting bruises. She bit her lip, glared at them with hatred burning in her eyes, and raised her hand. Let's retreat. We don't have the numbers or the strength to defeat them right now. The Tengu and foxes were quick to obey her, grabbing their comrades and leaping away from Naruto and the others. As they retreated back into the forest, the girl glared at them again. You damn devils, mark my words, I will make you give me back my mother. As the girl and her companions finally disappeared, Naruto and the others slowly relaxed. He glanced around to find Motohama, Matsuda, and Kiryu coming out of their trance-like states. One of those foxes must have cast some kind of illusion on them to keep them from seeing what was happening. Asia was checking Issei for any wounds, though there was no way he would have been injured by such a weak offensive. Irina had retracted her wings, but she looked primed and ready in case those people ambushed them again. What was all that about? Asked Kiba as he looked at where the girl had disappeared. I have no idea. Naruto sighed and ran a hand through his hair, but I believe we'll find out soon enough, whether we want or not. Devil Ninja. Naruto and his friends returned to the hotel at exactly the correct time they needed to. After returning to their rooms for a brief moment, they were summoned to the dining room for dinner. Like the rest of this hotel, the dining room was very much in the Western fashion, with large tables and chairs instead of small tables lined up in rows for them to sit on the floor in Caesar. The tables were all round, covered in expensive white cloth, and featured more utensils than most normal people knew what to do with. Even Naruto only understood how the numerous utensils were supposed to be used because Rias had drilled it into his head. Oddly enough, while the dining room was completely westernized, the dinner was a traditional Kyoto dish, boiled tofu. Also known as udofu, the meal was served in something similar to a hot pot. Several additions were prepared along with the tofu, including kelp, a somi no suyu broth, green onions, dried bonito flakes, and Chinese cabbages. Naruto was more of a meat and ramen person, but he would admit that the tofu was delicious. It was soft and sweet, and the way it melted on his tongue caused his appetite to blaze. They'd been forced to order 7 more dishes because Naruto was just so hungry. Sitting at the dinner table with Naruto, Issei, Kiba, Asia, and Irina were Azazel and Rosweiss. Since this was the perfect time, Naruto informed them of what happened. They listened as he explained how they were attacked at Fushimi Inari with puzzled expressions. When he finished, Azazel's frown had grown a lot more serious than what Naruto was used to seeing. "I'm not sure what's going on here," he confessed. "We took the proper procedures to inform the yokai of Kyoto that you would be coming here, so the ruler of this place should have been informed about all this beforehand. Why would they attack you? The leader of this place is Yasaka, right?" said Naruto as he blew on his tofu and stuck it in his mouth. Ah, this really was good. It might not have been ramen good, but he definitely wouldn't mind having this again sometimes. Wait, maybe he should even add it to his ramen. It was a brilliant idea. I amaze myself sometimes. Ignoring the snort in his mind, Naruto listened as Azazel confirmed his thoughts. Yes, Yasaka is the Kyuubi, the 9-tailed fox who controls Kyoto. She is basically the ruler of all yokai. Naruto. Kiba suddenly started, "You don't think?" "I do." Nodding at Kiba, Naruto turned to Azazel and Rosweiss. "The person who attacked us was a little blonde kitsune. She couldn't have been very old, maybe 11 or 12 at most. Anyway, she told us to give her mother back. She seemed to be under the impression that we had kidnapped her mother. I think she might be Yasaka's daughter." Azazel and Rosweiss stared at him, though while the silver-haired beauty seemed stunned, the fallen angel was rubbing his chin in thought. "Yasaka is said to have a daughter, though I don't know how old she is. Did she have 9 tails?" "Yup," he nodded. "Yasaka and her daughter are the only kitsune with 9 tails, so that was definitely her. It sounds like there's trouble in Kyoto. I'll have my subordinates look into this. With luck, we can meet with this girl and clear up the misunderstanding she has about you. Until then, just continue touring Kyoto as you have been. It would be a shame to let this bad experience ruin your school trip." That was the best Naruto could hope for, and since they had finished this rather serious discussion, the dinner conversation turned to more pleasant topics. Asia and Irina began talking about what they wanted to do tomorrow, while Issei asked Azazel for advice on how to boost his powers. That was a pretty perverse topic, so Naruto ignored them. He instead talked to Kiba and Rosweiss. Dinner eventually came to an end, and everyone was asked to return to their rooms. Naruto stood up with the others. He didn't intend to return to his room, though. He placed a hand on Irina's shoulder, grabbing her attention. "Would now be a good time to talk?" he asked. Irina looked at him, biting her lip, and then slowly nodded. "Yes, I suppose we should talk now." Since Irina was staying with a group of girls from their class, they couldn't use her room, and this seemed to be something she didn't want to tell others about, so his room was out of the question. The hotel had several lobbies they could sit in. Naruto led her to one of those. Irina sat down, but he bought a pair of drinks from a nearby vending machine, and then, setting one drink in front of Irina, he sat down on the opposite side of the table. Irina spent several long moments staring at her drink before taking it in hand, popping the cap, and drinking from it. Naruto sipped his own drink, something made from red bean paste. He didn't say anything. It wasn't really his place to talk yet. "You know how Xenovia didn't return to Kuo after the battle with Kokobile?" Irina began. He nodded. "I do. I always wondered about that. Well, after we learned about God's death, Zenobia confronted the church about it and discovered that all of the higher-ups knew as well. Even our own master knew it. But no one told us. Irina clasped her hands around the drink as though seeking comfort. I wasn't there when she confronted them, but I heard a rumor about how Zenobia had screamed at them, called them frauds and liars, and then stormed out. For a few days after that, Zenobia had seemed so dead. It was like her purpose in life had disappeared. Even when Michael Sama had come down and offered to reincarnate us as angels for his brave saints, Zenobia had been completely uninterested. I accepted, of course. Being an angel has always been my dream. However, sometime after I went to heaven so I could become an angel, Zenobia disappeared and no one's heard from her since. Naruto knew a bit about this. He couldn't remember who he'd had this conversation with, but he was sure someone had told him about Zenobia disappearing. Despite that, he listened intently. I'm guessing someone spotted her recently, he asked. It was the only thing he could think of that would distract this girl so much. Irina nodded. Someone from the church said they saw her, in Kyoto. Naruto twitched as Irina suddenly looked up, worry clear on her face. Naruto, you don't think, Zenobia wouldn't, that girl's mother, you don't think she had something to do with her disappearance, do you? Oh, boy. Naruto gazed into Irina's pleading eyes, which seemed to be begging him for some kind of reassurance. He leaned back in his chair. What should he say? What could he say? Being Naruto, he decided to just wing it and said the first thing that came to mind. Even if she is responsible, it just means you and I will have to bring her back to her senses. He raised his left hand and made a fist. With our fists if we have to. Irina stared at him for a long moment. Then, PFFT. A smile broke out on her face. That's exactly the kind of thing I'd expect you to say. You're right. If she somehow does have something to do with Yusaka's disappearance, we'll help her see the error of her ways. That said, I like to think she's not involved. Naruto nodded. Zenobia was Irina's best friend. He understood exactly how she felt. After all, his best friend had betrayed the village and gone totally rogue for a long time. Thank you, Naruto. I feel a lot better. I'm glad I could help. You can always come to me if you need a hand. Irina nodded and blushed. I will. Thanks. Since their conversation was over, the two of them finished their drinks and left the lobby. He looked at a nearby clock hanging on the wall. It looked like they would still have time to take a bath if they were quick. He really wanted to get the grime from the day's events off. Explosion. However, just as they were nearing the baths, a loud and very familiar shout rang out. They looked at each other. It was clear in Irina's eyes that she sensed the same lustful intentions he had. Nodding, they hurried their pace, traveling through several corridors, until they reached the emergency escape, where the voice had come from. There, Naruto found a scene like something out of a perverted fantasy. Rosweiss was kneeling on the ground, doing her best to cover both her completely bare chest and her naked groin. Tears leaked from her eyes as she glared at Issei. Naruto could barely focus on the gloating boy as he stared at the naked Rosweiss. While he would always claim otherwise, it wasn't like Naruto didn't have his own perverse desires. Jiraiya had been his sensei, after all. Rosweiss was also gorgeous. Her silver hair was arrayed around her body, somehow enhancing the allure of her nude figure. Large breasts were pushed against a slender forearm as she tried to cover her nipples, but the result really enhanced her eroticism. Perhaps it was because she was a Valkyrie, but the woman also sported a flat stomach, narrow waist, and beautiful hips. Mastering his own desires before anyone else could take notice, Naruto stepped onto the escape hatch and removed his school jacket. Meanwhile, Irina went over to Issei and yanked on his ear. Ow, Irina, what are you doing? Why are you such a pervert sometimes, eyes? Oh, Lord, who art thou in heaven, please forgive this devil for his sins. Yeouch. Don't pray. You know that hurts me. Naruto ignored Issei's pained cries as he covered Rosweiss with his jacket. The woman sniffled as she accepted his gesture with a soft, thank you. He helped the woman stand to her feet and turned away as she buttoned his jacket up. It wasn't going to do much. His jacket was large enough that it at least covered her bottom, but anyone looking up would catch a glimpse of the promised land. Even bending over would send men into a catatonic state as her rear end became visible. Are you okay? Asked Naruto. No, Roswise sniffed. My clothes are ruined. Do you know how much a waste that is? It's environmentally unfriendly. Plus, I'll never be able to get married now. Scratching his cheek, Naruto said the first thing that came to mind. I'd marry you. Huh. Before Naruto could respond to the woman's shocked expression, Azazel stepped onto the emergency escape. He paused, surveying the scene with something like a mixture of amusement and bemusement. He shook his head and quickly got to the point. I'm sorry to disturb all of you as your fun was reaching its climax, but we've been summoned to a nearby restaurant. Someone has summoned us. Naruto shared a glance with Roswise. Judging from her rather befuddled expression, she didn't know anything about this either. He looked back at Azazel. Who? A grin stretched across Azazel's mouth as he answered. A very cute Maumahu Shouju. Devil Ninja. Later that evening, when everyone had already gone to bed, Naruto found himself walking alongside Irina, Kiba, Issei, and Asia as they all followed Azazel. There wasn't much foot traffic this late at night. Naruto supposed it was because this was a tourist destination and all of the sites that people could visit were best visited during the day. Only a few people wandered the streets. A young man talking on his phone, an old lady walking her dog, and a few older teens who looked like college students heading into a restaurant. Here we are, Azazel announced as he led the Grimoire group plus Irina to a small restaurant on a street corner. The restaurant was called Deraku. It looked like a very traditional Japanese restaurant, with lintel posts, a slanted roof, and fox statues on either side of the door. Azazel went inside. Naruto and the others were forced to follow. They passed through several rooms before appearing before a door, which opened seconds later. Seraphal stood on the other side, wearing a beautiful mauve kimono that suited her short height well. The kimono stretched tightly across her massive melons. Naruto wasn't Issei, but even he couldn't help but notice how her breasts spilled over the obi tied around her kimono. That would never happen with a regular Japanese woman. Her long hair had been tied up in a traditional bun. A single strand trailed down her face. Oh, her eyes lit up. If it isn't Naruto, how are you? The last time we saw each other was at that convention, wasn't it? It was. Naruto grinned back. I was really surprised to see you there, but you really looked like you belonged. He paused. It's nice to see you. You look beautiful. Hee hee. Seraphal giggled quietly as she turned around to show off her kimono. It's not bad, right? I thought a kimono would suit the traditional Japanese atmosphere of Kyoto. Naruto cupped a hand to his chin and nodded. Indeed, a kimono definitely suits the occasion and setting well. Are you two just going to stand there talking? Hurry up and get inside. Seraphal was not the only person in the room. At the sound of the annoyed voice, Naruto and the others looked past Seraphal to find the members of Sona Citri's peerage also present. Of course, Sona and Tsubaki were not there. They were in their third year and therefore not attending this trip. The members currently present were Saji, Tsubasa, Rhea, and Momo. Hey Saji, Issei greeted the student council member with a wave. How's Kyoto treating you? Where did you all go this afternoon? We're the student council, so we spend the entire afternoon helping out the teachers, Saji sighed as he ran a hand down his face. He looked tired. Actually, all of them looked tired. Naruto guessed being forced to help the teachers instead of enjoying their time off was taking its toll. He offered them his silent sympathies. Come on in and sit down, Seraphal said with a gesture. The food here is delicious, especially the chicken dishes. Naruto, Sekiryute-chan, you two can eat as much as you want. Seraphal ordered several more dishes, which came out surprisingly quickly. A young man dressed in a traditional male kimono served them, offering up a variety of chicken, tofu, and beef dishes. Naruto took his chopsticks and popped a piece into his mouth. He blinked in surprise as a mild burst of flavor hit his tongue. The seasoning was light, allowing the chicken's natural flavor to spring forth, but there was just the hint of spiciness to give it that good kick. He tried the beef dish next. This is really good, Irina said in surprise before taking her chopsticks and presenting some food to Asia. Here, Asia, try this tofu. Oh okay, on. As Irina began feeding Asia food, Naruto and Issei quickly found their eyes swiveling in the girl's direction. They watched, silent for a moment, as the two girls soon began feeding each other. Hey, sensei, isn't there something erotic about two girls feeding each other? There is definitely something erotic about it. I'm so happy to be alive right now. You and me both. While Issei was crying tears of joy, Naruto didn't let on how cute he thought the scene was, but he couldn't deny there was something appealing about watching Asia and Irina feed each other. Naruto, you should try this dish too. Seraphol held her chopsticks out to Naruto, leaning over the table so she could reach him. The act caused her kimono to part and reveal just a hint of her creamy breasts. It's called Kyokezeki. It's really good. Come on, try some. Okay then. Naruto didn't hesitate to lean down and open his mouth. He closed his mouth over Seraphol's chopsticks, aware that those chopsticks had also been inside of the Mao's mouth. Thinking about how he had indirectly kissed one of Hell's most powerful devils, Naruto thoughtfully chewed his food, admiring its subtle flavor. Kyoto really was mired in tradition. Even their food tasted like something he'd expect from ancient times. How is it? Asked Seraphol, her eyes boring into his with a bright sparkle. It's delicious, he said after swallowing. Isn't it? Seraphol looked pleased by his response. His and Seraphol's interaction did not go unnoticed. The student council members were staring at them in wonder, or more like shock. Perhaps they thought it weird that someone of his low standing was being fed by a Mao. Well, whatever, it wasn't like he cared what they thought. However, Irina didn't seem pleased by how close he and Seraphol were acting either. Naruto, please try this food as well. What the? GGMMfish. Naruto was left unable to speak after Irina liberally shoved her chopsticks into his mouth. He gagged as something was practically forced down his throat. It was probably food, but he didn't even get the chance to enjoy it before he was forced to either swallow it or choke. Maybe he should consider talking to Irina soon. Yes, that was definitely a good idea. Now that we're all nice and fed, I should explain why I'm here, Seraphol said. It was about half an hour after they had arrived at the restaurant, and by this point, it was probably safe to say most of the people there were full. Saji was leaning back as he patted his belly. Issei was in much the same position. Out of the boys, only he and Kiba didn't look like they were ready to fall asleep. Meanwhile, Irina, Asia, and the student council girls were sighing in content as they sipped some warm tea. So, you probably already know this much, but I'm actually in charge of foreign affairs for the three factions, Seraphol began after everyone had their fill. I had come here a while ago to secure the cooperation of Kyoto's yokai faction. She set her chopsticks on the table, a frown marring her cute face. But, well, it seems there's a bit of a problem. I'm going to assume this has something to do with that little girl we ran into, Naruto said. That girl is Kuno, Seraphol told him. She's the daughter of Yusaka, the Kyuubi who rules over the yokai here in Kyoto. According to several reports we received recently, Yusaka went missing a few days ago and hasn't been seen since. Naruto thought about the situation and tried to correlate it with what he already knew. He looked at the ceiling. Like the rest of this restaurant, the ceiling had the traditional elegance found in a Japanese building. It hadn't been modernized at all. I think I understand, he said at last. Someone kidnapped the Kyuubi, which caused her daughter and the other yokai to panic. Then, when Kuno saw us devils wandering around Kyoto, she assumed we were the ones who kidnapped her mother and attacked us. That's about the gist of it, Seraphol said with a nod. Then doesn't that mean the real question is, who actually kidnapped Yusaka? Asked Kiba. We're already pretty sure we know who did it, Azazel told him. Naruto nodded. You suspect the Chaos Brigade is involved? Well, not quite. Seraphol rubbed her cheeks and sighed. We recently learned that certain factions of the Chaos Brigade had a falling out. The Hero faction, which is made up of humans with sacred gears, split off from the rest of the Chaos Brigade and is doing their own thing. We believe it's the Hero faction who is currently causing trouble in Kyoto, though we don't know what they want. As Seraphol spoke, Azazel poured some sake into a saucer and downed it in a single go. He then poured himself another drink, though he nursed this one. Naruto thought about the young girl whose mother had been kidnapped. He felt for her. Granted, he didn't necessarily understand how she felt, but that was because Naruto's mother had died the same day he was born. He couldn't understand what it felt like to have your own mother kidnapped. You guys have gotten mixed up in trouble again, Saji said, his eyes twitching. I'm not sure if you noticed, but getting into trouble is kind of our thing. Naruto grinned at the boy, who gained an even more annoyed look. How can you be so blasé about this? Easy. It's all par for the course. This is a pretty vexing situation, Azazel added as he finished off his drink. I'm almost tempted to believe they chose this time to kidnap Yasaka because they knew we'd be here. He frowned and looked at Naruto. That ancient dragon god of yours didn't inform them we'd be coming, did she? Ophis seems more interested in going on dates and mating than what the Chaos Brigade is doing, Naruto said. I doubt she told them anything. Dates. While Azazel looked confused, Seraphal said, given the nature of this situation, explaining everything to the yokai faction and securing their cooperation is imperative. I'm going to continue talking to them. Hopefully, we can clear up this misunderstanding. In that case, I guess I'll be acting on my own to figure out what these damn terrorists are up to. Azazel cursed. He seemed a bit more belligerent than normal, but Naruto realized that he was probably just upset. This fallen angel was also a pervert. He probably wanted to play with some Mikos or something, but he couldn't do that if there were terrorists causing trouble for them. What should we do? Asked Naruto. Do you need any help securing the yokai's cooperation, or should we help figure out what the hero faction is doing here in Kyoto? Naruto wasn't the sort of person who could stand still when something was going on. He wanted to be in the thick of things. He was a man of action. Acting like a complacent high school student enjoying his youth was just boring. You all should just enjoy your trip, Azazel said. You might be devils, but you're also students. Leave this situation to the adults. Issei looked like he felt the same as Naruto did. But that's. If anything happens, I will call on you for help. That said, this is an important time of your youth. You aren't going to have that many school trips, so if possible, I would like you to enjoy your time in Kyoto doing things that normal high school students do. While Issei and the others looked touched by Azazel's words, Naruto didn't think he could feel satisfied knowing that something was happening and he wasn't going to be a part of it. He glanced at Irina, who looked worried about something. She must have been thinking about Zenobia. According to that report from the church, Zenobia was somewhere in Kyoto, or she had been at last sighting. Knowing this girl as he did, Naruto was sure she was worried that Zenobia might have joined the hero faction and is helping them cause problems. Azazel is right, Seraphal said with good cheer. You guys shouldn't let what's happening here bother you too much. Enjoy your time here in Kyoto. I certainly plan on enjoying myself. That was something he'd expect Seraphal to say. She wasn't the type to let anything get in the way of her fun. If necessary, she would probably blast the hero faction into next week. Of course, she might also accidentally destroy Kyoto as a result. Naruto had heard from Rias that Seraphal had trouble holding back, though he'd never seen her fight before. Yet even though everyone was telling them to ignore what was happening and enjoy their time in Kyoto, Naruto didn't think he would be able to. Of course, there wasn't much he could do right now. The situation wasn't something that he could just walk into and solve with brute force. He needed a better understanding of the situation, which wouldn't happen unless he could meet with Kuno again and convince her to tell him about her plight. Well, he was sure they'd meet again. Until then, Naruto decided he would train with Kurama in their new technique. That was all he could do, for now. Chapter 35, The Hero Faction. Tatsu, Ne, Mi, Ushi, Tori, Suru, Inu, Suru, Tori, Uma, Tora, I, Hitsuji, Suru, Yu, Suru, Tatsu, Tatsu, Ne, Mi, Ushi, Tori, Suru, Inu, Suru, Tori, Uma, Tora, I, Hitsuji, Suru, Yu, Suru, Tatsu. Deep within the seal that kept Kurama from escaping into the world, Naruto and his giant, orange-furred partner were sitting together and practicing hand seals. Naruto had crossed his legs while he worked. Kurama couldn't cross his legs. His body was physically incapable of such a feat, so he sat with his legs hunched and used his human-like hands to create the same hand seals Naruto was making. Uma, Suru, Tori, Inu, Tora, I, Hitsuji, I, Uma, Suru, Tori, Inu, Tora, I, Hitsuji, I, Uma. The goal of this exercise was to practice synchronizing their hand seals so they could perform the new jutsu Naruto had created. It was a long and involved process. The jutsu required them to complete 365 hand seals. This normally wouldn't be a problem. Outside of the fact that making 365 hand seals was impractical during a fight, Naruto could easily do this. The problem was that he and Kurama had to be in perfect sync. Their hand seals couldn't even be a second off. It couldn't even be 0.005 seconds off. Tatsu, mi, Tori, Tori, mi, Suru, Tori, Uma, Tatsu, mi, Tori, Tori, mi, Suru, Tori, Uma. This was their 60th time practicing these same hand seals, though they were not using chakra to cast any jutsu. The technique they were practicing seals for was dangerous. If they made even a single wrong move, all the chakra inside of their bodies would explode, not only taking out them, but also destroying more than half of Japan. Time within the seal moved differently than time outside of it. An hour in here was only a minute outside. This meant Naruto and Kurama could practice to their heart's content. I think we've just about got it, Naruto said as they finished all 365 hand seals again. Ha! The loud gust of breath hit Naruto's back, blowing his hair every which way. This is a lot harder than I thought it would be. I think my fingers are cramping. Mine too, which is weird because this isn't even my real body. Maybe I have mental cramps. Enough with the jokes. Heaving another hefty sigh, Kurama placed his hands in front of himself and used them as a pillow for his chin. Naruto followed his example and used Kurama's paws as a backrest. Your fur is so soft and fluffy. HMPH. Unlike you hairless monkeys, I have a lustrous coat of well-groomed fur. I won't deny that. I feel like I'm sinking into a cloud. The two of them remained like this for a while, just trading banter as they relaxed, but all good things eventually came to an end. Are you really sure this is going to work, Naruto? I wouldn't have created this jutsu if I didn't think it would work. Naruto's answer seemed to satisfy Kurama, who offered a single nod. While he would have liked to stick around, Naruto did have a school trip to attend to, and so he closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then opened them again. He was back in the real world. It was early in the morning, early enough that the sky was just beginning to shine with light from the sun. Naruto was sitting cross-legged by a corner. Behind him was a large fence. Before him was a large, flat roof with only a few power boxes and a door leading to a staircase that would take him back to the lobby. He wasn't alone. 4 other people were outside with him. Issei and Asia were practicing against each other. Asia was firing magic at Issei, who ran, swerved, and jumped to avoid being struck. If he had to guess, Naruto would say that Asia was trying to further develop her reflexes for releasing magical power at close range, while Issei was trying to increase his ability to react and dodge close-range attacks. Several meters from Asia and Issei was Kiba and Irina, who were sparring with a pair of wooden swords. Kiba was flitting around Irina, using his superior speed to attack her from every conceivable angle, but that didn't mean Irina was defenseless. She spun around, angling her blade so Kiba's would glance off. Then she countered with a quick slash. Kiba would dodge by leaping back. Then he'd leap right back into the thick of things. Naruto watched the two groups for a little while. The 4 eventually noticed that he was back from his journey into the seal and made a unanimous decision to take a quick break. He could see as they drew closer that all 4 of them were covered in sweat. His eyes were naturally drawn to Asia and Irina, the 2 girls in the group. Irina wore a tight pair of black spandex shorts that did nothing hide her magnificent thighs and hips. Likewise, her sports bra only covered her breasts, and there was a notorious gap that revealed a healthy portion of cleavage. Sweat dripped down her toned belly and thighs. Naruto wouldn't lie and say the sight wasn't attractive, though he did his best not to stare for too long. Asia was wearing similar clothes to Irina, but perhaps because he thought of her as a sort of little sister, her appearance seemed more cute than erotic. She just looked too adorable for her own good. I see you're back, Kiba said as he sat next to Naruto, the others following suit. How was it? Any luck? We've got the hand seals down. Naruto shrugged. But unfortunately, we won't be able to practice synchronizing our chakra. It's too dangerous. Do you think it will be ready in time for your rating game? Asked Irina. You guys are having a rating game against Saraord when we return from Kyoto, right? Yup. Naruto scratched the back of his head. I'm pretty sure this will be ready by then, but I don't plan on using it for a rating game. Why not? Asked Issei. Because it's too dangerous, and too powerful. Pausing, Naruto tilted his head and bit his lip. This is a technique that will allow me to use the full extent of Kurama's power. However, Kurama is a being whose powers are on par with Ophis herself. That sort of overwhelming advantage would make for an interesting match, don't you think? While Issei didn't seem to understand, Kiba nodded several times as he realized where Naruto was going with this. Rating games are about more than just displaying your power. It is also about strategy and utilizing your pieces to the best of your abilities. A good portion of the rating game is about the king showing off how well he or she can use the members of their peerage. If you used this kind of power to win each rating game, people would eventually begin to question Rias' ability to win without you. Exactly. Naruto crossed his arms and nodded. They'd say things like, well, of course Rias won when she has such a strong piece, or, Rias only won because her pawn is so powerful. She wouldn't be winning on her own merits anymore, which would lower her overall standing among the devil population. Rating games were ultimately meant to display the competency of a peerage's king. If a king relied on the power of one piece, then that king's abilities would be called into question. Naruto wanted Rias to shine. She couldn't do that if he took away her thunder. Besides, using Kurama's power for what was essentially a game felt an awful lot like cheating to him. That sounds rough, Irina said. That's politics for you. Naruto shrugged. Politics sound rough. Naruto couldn't disagree. By the way, he began as he gazed at the two wooden swords Kiba and Irina had in their possession. Are you two planning to carry those swords everywhere you go? Kiba and Irina looked at the wooden swords that were currently on their laps. They weren't anything special, just a pair of wooden swords shaped like katanas. Well, I was thinking we might need something to defend ourselves with, Irina admitted. However, let's do this instead. Kiba extended his hand and created a short sword. Gleaming silver in the light, it was shaped like a European broadsword, but it was only about the size of a longer than average dagger. Here, you can use this to defend yourself if something happens while we're on the school trip. Oh, that's a holy short sword. Irina took the weapon from Kiba. This will be easy to conceal in my school bag. Thank you. Irina twirled the weapon around in her hand, causing it to become a blur. As he watched Irina skillfully test the weight and balance of the blade, Naruto caught sight of Issei's demotivated expression. He wasn't the only one. Asia saw it first. Is something wrong, Aiz-san? Nah. Issei tried to play off his feelings. Not really. I was just thinking, is it the power of the dragon that's attracting all this trouble? I remember hearing that a dragon's power tends to attract people who are drawn to power. Issei was likely referring to how they had been attacked by those yokai. I wouldn't worry about that, Naruto said. If anything, what's happening here is completely unrelated to us. We just happened to arrive at a bad time. Even if you were the cause of all this trouble, it just means you need to be strong enough that you protect everyone. Yeah, you're right. Thanks, sensei. Anytime. Naruto smiled, but then a sudden surge of mischief ran through his veins, causing his friendly smile to widen into something more fox-like. Now, how about you and I spar a bit? We still have 30 minutes before breakfast. As Issei's face rapidly paled, Naruto heard a chuckle deep within his mind. Yes, this wasn't for his own amusement. All he wanted to do was help Issei get stronger. Nothing more, nothing less. Right, Devil Ninja. Sanjusanjin-do was a Buddhist temple in the Higashiyama district. To reach it, Naruto, Kiba, Irina, and the rest of their class had to take a bus from the Kyoto station near Kyoto Tower. They could have walked. It was only a 21-minute walk. However, the only ones who wouldn't have had a problem walking there were Naruto, Kiba, Irina, and some of the students who were in sports clubs. No one else wanted to walk. The entrance to the temple was marked by a parking lot. The temple itself was longer than it was wide, and it possessed the slanted roof typical of traditional Japanese architecture. Walls made of wood gave the structure an ancient feel. Naruto heard that the temple was created in 1164 under the orders of Emperor Go Shirakawa, so the old feeling of the building made all too much sense. Man, would you look at this place, Naruto muttered with a whistle. It looks so decrepit. Oh, don't be rude, Naruto. Irina elbowed his side. Of course it's gonna look a bit, dilapidated. This place is old. The government does a great job of refurbishing this place so it still retains its original appearance, but that doesn't mean they're going to make it look brand new. I guess. Still, Naruto gazed at the building and sighed. It doesn't change the fact that it looks old. Oh, whatever, Irina said with a smile. Come on, you two, Kiba said with a gesture. Everyone is heading inside. Coming, Irina said as she followed Kiba. Naruto was about to follow them as well, but then he paused as a slight shiver ran down his spine. It felt like someone was staring at him. He turned around and looked at where he felt the source, but there was no one there. No, that wasn't quite right. Someone had been there, but they weren't there now. Naruto, Irina called out to him. You coming? I'm coming. Shrugging, Naruto ran to catch up with Irina and Kiba. He hadn't felt any hostile intent in that gaze, so he was sure everything was fine. Entering the temple with the other students, the first thing Naruto noticed were the 1,000 golden statues standing on the left and right sides of the main statue, which was larger than the others. Situated in 10 rows and 50 columns, the 1,000 statues were covered in gold leaf. They looked like women clasping their hands in prayer, well, 2 of their hands. These women had 42 arms that Naruto could count. However, he knew from the brochure that these were the 1,000 armed cannon. You had to subtract the 2 regular arms and multiply the arms behind their backs by the 25 planes of existence to get the full 1,000. They also had 11 heads. Naruto thought the statues were weird, but what did he know? On top of the 1,000 armed cannon statues, there were also 28 statues of guardian deities, including the 2 famous statues of Fujin and Raijin. I read somewhere that the 28 guardian deities have their origins in Sanskrit texts of Hinduism, Kiba said as he, Naruto, and Irina walked along and admired the statues. The deities here are Narankango Ou, Mishiku Kongorikishi, Toho Ten, Buryokusha Tenu, Barubakusha Tenu, Bishamontan, Daban Tenu, Teishaku Ten, Daibankudoku Ten, Mawara Ou, Jinmo Ten, Kanpira Ou, Manzensha Ou, Hippokara Ou, Gobujyogo Ten, Kanjikikujuku Ou, Sanshidai Sho, Nandaryu Ou, Sakuraryu Ou, Karura Ou, Kondai Ou, Manson Ou, Magaraka Ou, Makishira Ou, Kendaba Ou, Ashura Ou, Kanara Ou, and Basusenin. That's a lot of really long names to remember, Naruto muttered. The deities can trace their origins to Indian Dharmic mythology and correspond to Varuna, Vishnu, Lakshmi, Brahma, Shiva, Garuda, Vayu, Narayana, Indra, and a number of other powerful Hindu gods. It sounds like these Hindu gods have a good deal of influence in Japan, Naruto said. I hear the Hindu gods are some of the most powerful around, Irina said. A number of Asian religions came from Hinduism, and a large number of people within these countries believe in the Hindu gods more than any other. I wonder if we'll ever get to meet them, Naruto wondered out loud. Probably not, Kiba said. They tend to keep to themselves, I hear. Since they weren't allowed to take pictures inside of the temple, Naruto had to wait until they were back outside to take any pictures. He made sure to get pictures of himself, Kiba, and Irina standing in front of the temple, and then sent them to Rias. Knowing her, she'd want to know how their trip was going. He also made sure to send some selfies. After visiting Sanjusanjin-do, the group moved on to several other temples within the area, including Yoganan and Hojuji Temple. Naruto took several more pictures to send of each temple. However, while sending them, he kept getting this feeling like there were several eyes on him. None of the eyes felt hostile. What's more, he couldn't see anyone who looked suspicious. Still, it was annoying to be watched by people he couldn't find. It stung his pride as a ninja to know there were people out there who could hide from him. Jerks. How dare they prove better at hiding than he was? After several hours of walking from temple to temple, the class went to grab some lunch. Everyone was tired. Several people complained about how their feet hurt. The place where they chose to eat was a traditional Japanese restaurant with an aquarium built into the counter of the first floor. Since their class consisted of nearly 25 students, they were given a place on the second floor, which was meant to hold large and small banquets. Naruto and Irina were forced to sit apart from Kiba. The poor boy found himself surrounded by girls the moment he sat down, and the two of them were pushed off to the side. Kiba-kun, what are you thinking of having? I hear their tempura is really good. We can share if you want. Back off, sister. He's sharing with me. Kiba's as popular as ever, Irina muttered with sweat dripping down the side of her face. That's a prince for you. Naruto shrugged. Irina glanced at him. Are you not jealous of him? Why would I be? Asked Naruto, tilting his head. I'm dating Rias Gramori, often considered the most beautiful girl in school. I'm also dating Kaneko Tuju and Ravel Phoenix, both of whom are considered incredible beauties. I hear Ravel has reached the same level of popularity with the freshmen that Rias has. He wasn't sure what to think of that. Proud, annoyed, protective, call him possessive, but he didn't like it when other people ogled them. I guess you make a good point. Besides, Naruto added with a shrug, none of those girls can even hold a candle to you. When Irina's face burst into color, Naruto wondered if maybe he shouldn't have said that, but then he thought about it. Wasn't now the perfect time to talk about the elephant in the closet? Irina, do you love eyes? What? Irina blinked, then blushed a bit. No, well, sort of. It's a bit complicated. Why do you ask? Back when I first met you, I noticed that you would often look at eyes when you thought no one else was looking. Irina's cheeks burned at his comment, but he continued. However, you never did anything about it. I assumed you decided not to act on your feelings because he's dating Asia. I think he was also dating Akano at the time, but I could be mistaken. In any case, I assumed you had decided not to do anything because you are Christian and believe in monogamy. But lately, you haven't really been paying as much attention to eyes as you used to. Irina's cheeks retained their pink coloration as she looked away. It was pretty cute. That said, Naruto wondered if maybe he was being a bit too blunt. He probably could have asked that question more delicately, but he'd never been what he would call the delicate type. It is a bit complicated. I actually did like Aiz-kun for a long time, Irina spoke slowly, carefully, as if each word was something precious. Back when we were little, he and I would always play together, and I had a really big crush on him, though it seems he thought I was a boy this whole time. A slightly bitter smile rose to her face. But you were right, I did love Aiz-kun. Even after learning that he'd been reincarnated as a devil and had become a pervert, I still loved him. Did something change? That's where things get a bit complicated, Irina admitted. I do still have feelings for Aiz-kun, but they aren't as strong as they used to be. I think a part of it is because Aiz is dating Asia. They seem so close. They're holding hands or hugging every time I see them, and well, I know they are doing that, in private. Judging from the way the redness was spreading from her face to her ears, that likely referred to sex. Naruto knew Asia and Issei were physically intimate. Akano had introduced the two of them to the joys of sex back when she had been a part of their relationship. It was only natural the two would continue after Akano broke things off with them. And you felt uncomfortable about trying to get between them? Naruto guessed. Something like that, Irina admitted with a shrug. It's just as you said. I'm Christian. In Christianity, we believe in monogamy. One man and one woman get married till death do they part. The idea of trying to enter into a relationship with Aiz-kun and Asia never really occurred to me, and so I just, sort of gave up, I guess. He. Naruto nodded several times. Had he been in her shoes, he probably wouldn't have been as bothered. While there were plenty of monogamous relationships back in the elemental nations, polyamory was a legitimate practice. Many men and women had their own harems. Also, Naruto himself was currently in a relationship with 3 women. No, he supposed it was 4. He had gone on that date with Ophis, though they hadn't done anything beyond the date. Also, Irina began, her face turning an even darker shade of red. Also, Naruto asked when she trailed off, prodding her to continue. However, Irina did not continue. Her cheeks burned so fiercely Naruto thought they might catch fire. She wasn't looking at him anymore, but down at her lap, though she would glance at him from between her parted hair every so often. Naruto felt his heartbeat a little bit faster as he wondered if they were about to get to the heart of what he really wanted to talk about, the relationship between them. He'd known about her feelings for Issei. That was why he'd kept their relationship cordial and friendly. He teased her a bit, but he never went beyond that because it wouldn't be right. However, if she no longer had her heart set on Issei, then maybe. Majiwario sen Tutuku Yobikakeru Sora, Juji no Shita de Mao Senritsu no Koa. Just before he could finish his thought, Naruto's phone began ringing. It was the ringtone he used for when Kaneko was calling him. Yowasa Nato Kimi ni Misetaku ni Kara, Kaze wo ukat furatit susum. Ah, I'm sorry, Irina, would you mind? He held up the ringing phone. Mastering her blush, Irina smiled and shook her head, her twintails swaying from side to side. Not at all. Go ahead, thanks. Tapping on the accept call button, Naruto placed the smartphone against his ear. Kaneko, what's up? Naruto, is everything okay over there? He blinked. Of course, why wouldn't it be? While he didn't let anything leak into his voice, Naruto wondered if Kaneko had somehow found out about the yokai attack yesterday. He didn't think so. If she knew, then it meant Rias would also know, and if Rias knew, then she would have called him the moment she learned about it. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel a trickle of worry worm its way into his gut. Well, it's not serious, I guess. It's just that Rias showed me those photos you sent. Was something wrong with the photos? I don't know. In the background of several of those photos, I saw a number of fox yokai. That isn't very rare. I mean, they live all over Kyoto, so I'm not surprised to see them, but it looked like they were all staring at you. Naruto frowned as he realized he hadn't noticed any fox yokai while wandering around Kyoto that morning. However, he had felt eyes on him. Could those eyes he felt have been the fox yokai? Kurama, am I under an illusion? I cannot sense anything, but it is possible they are using a means to fool your sight that I cannot detect. We are in a different world, after all. Nodding, Naruto spoke into the phone. I don't think there is anything to worry about, but if something comes up, I'll call you. I appreciate that. Does Rias know? Of course. She was going to call you herself, but I called first. That explained why Kaneko was telling him this and not Rias. After saying goodbye to Kaneko, Naruto hung up and put the phone back into his pocket. He looked at Irina and smiled. Sorry about that, Irina. It looks like Kaneko saw something. Would you mind if we continued talking about? Naruto trailed off when he noticed Irina's pale face. He wondered what had caused her to look so worried, but then he looked around and realized that, aside from him, Irina, and Kiba, all of the other students were fast asleep. Slumped in their seats, they were leaning over the tables, snoring away. That was unusual in and of itself. However, something else made Naruto realize how unnatural this situation was. The waitress who was now standing before their table was not human. At first glance, she appeared to be nothing more than a Japanese woman of above-average looks. Her dark hair was long and lustrous. Her milky face was covered in makeup. She wore a pink kimono with cherry blossoms on it, complemented by the red obi around her waist. However, after a second glance, Naruto easily noticed the two fox ears twitching on her head. She also had a pair of tails, which he could see poking out of her kimono. Naruto remained calm. If this woman wanted to kill them, she wouldn't have stood there, waiting for him to notice her. Good afternoon. The woman bowed. I am a fox yokai who serves Yasaka-sama. I have come here at the behest of our Hime-sama to fetch you. She would like to apologize for her behavior the other day. Kiba was glancing at the woman with narrowed eyes. While Irina looked pale, Naruto could see that her hand had dug into her school bag. He didn't doubt she was gripping the holy short sword. I understand. Naruto took charge of the situation. Please guide us to where your Hime-sama is. Of course. The fox yokai bowed again. Come. I shall lead you to the inner capital where we Kyoto yokai live. The Mao and the fallen angel governor are already there waiting for you and the others. Naruto assumed the others was Issei and Asia. As he stood to his feet, Irina and Kiba relaxed their tense stances and followed suit. They walked down the stairs and out of the restaurant. No one seemed to even notice them as they passed. It was like they were ghosts. These Kyoto yokai sure are something, Naruto thought. Kurama mumbled in agreement. Devil ninja. Naruto couldn't quite figure out how they had gotten to their destination, and if asked, he would only be able to shrug. All they had done was walk through a secluded torii gate. Part of him wondered if this was like a yokai space-time ninjutsu. In either event, the place where he, Kiba, and Irina were led to could only be described as another world, a world separated from the one he knew. Ancient houses lined either side of a small road made of dirt. There was no black top to be found in this place. The houses themselves did not just look old, they actually were old. He could tell from the general shape these structures were in that they had been built hundreds of years ago. All of them reminded him of paintings he'd seen depicting old houses from the Edo period. They were not the only ones present. Issei, Asia, and Rossweiss showed up at around the same time he, Irina, and Kiba did. As they followed the fox yokai, Naruto looked up at the many buildings on either side of them, or, more specifically, he looked at the creatures staring at them from the windows. There were all manner of residents. A single-eyed yokai with a large face, kappa-like creatures with dishes on their heads. Naruto even snorted when he saw a tanuki and thought of Gaara. There were all manner of strange yokai. All of them were staring at him and the others with unbridled curiosity. The area was rather dark. Naruto didn't have a problem seeing, but he wondered why it was so dark. Their only source of light was a lantern that moved along the road in front of them. As Naruto stared at the lantern, it spun around and revealed that it had eyes and a mouth. Whooshashashasha. Crack. Everyone stopped walking when Naruto suddenly decked the lantern in the face. He blinked, looked at the others, then down at his fist, still outstretched in the general position of a straight jab. He slowly retracted his fist and rubbed the back of his head. Sorry. Reflex. The fox yokai who'd been guiding them sighed. You have my sincere apology. The yokai here love to play pranks. Oh, no worries. Naruto gave the woman his most dazzling foxy smile. Pranks are like my bread and butter. In fact, I should teach this lantern guy how to play a proper prank that won't end with his face being on the receiving end of my fist. For reasons Naruto couldn't understand, everyone who heard him talk suddenly shuddered. I think we should keep you away from all the yokai here, Kiba said seriously as Issei and Irina nodded along with him. Wah, how could you say that? Easily. Naruto pretended to cry. Unfortunately, his tears didn't seem to affect anyone. Kiba, Issei, Irina, and even Rossweiss looked indifferent. It was a good thing Asia was there. There. The cute blonde girl rubbed his back. Don't feel sad. I like your pranks. Thank you, Asia. Naruto smiled and ruffled the girl's hair like an affectionate older brother. I'm so glad I decided to adopt you as my little sister. You're a great Imouto. Hee hee. Asia blushed and squirmed underneath his large hand, but she seemed pleased by his words. The group continued on. Naruto studied the sights a bit more, but he eventually grew bored. All of the buildings looked fairly similar. It probably didn't help that the elemental nations had buildings that looked a lot like this. Unlike everyone else here, who were no doubt used to modern Japan, he knew of a world that blended this sort of architecture with more modern structures. So, this is the world of the yokai? Issei asked as they walked. He, at least, seemed rather fascinated. The fox yokai nodded. Yes, this is the place where most Kyoto yokai live. I have heard that you devils use bounded fields in raiding games. If you want to, think of this space as something created in a similar manner. We call this place the backstreets, or the inner capital. Of course, just like devils, there are those who live out there on the surface of Kyoto. Hearing more about how this place was created made Naruto realize it was more than a simple space-time ninjutsu. This space was more like a barrier ninjutsu that distorted space. He probably could have likened it to a pocket dimension or something similar, only on a massive scale like the bounded fields used in raiding games. While walking, a number of yokai on the street glanced their way and began talking. Are those humans? No, I heard they're devils. Devils, eh? It's pretty rare to see them here. Don't think it's ever happened before. Is that pretty foreign girl a devil too? I sense the presence of a dragon. So devils and dragons, huh? What about that one with the whiskers? He must be a fox yokai of some kind, right? While listening to the yokai talk, Naruto became curious and wandered closer to the woman guiding them. I'm guessing it's rare for devils to visit the inner capital. In point of fact, no devil has ever visited the inner capital before today, the woman informed him, her fox ears twitching. That said, it was going to happen eventually. We have been holding discussions with Serafal-sama for a little while now. Had our leader not gone missing, we would have invited her here at some point. Naruto nodded and fell back a bit. It seemed discussions had been in the works for longer than he had realized. Ever since the three factions formed an alliance, they had begun trying to build bridges with other factions. Currently, Naruto knew they were in talks with the Greek pantheon and the Shinto pantheon. He didn't know if they were trying to broker peace with anyone else. After passing through what he supposed was a residential area, they found themselves entering a forest with a large river flowing through it. He took a breath of air and almost smiled. The air here smelled unnaturally pure. It vaguely reminded him of home, which made him feel slightly homesick. Before long, Naruto and the others found themselves standing before a massive red torii connected to a huge mansion. It was another ancient structure. A traditional Japanese building surrounded by a wall that could only be accessed through the massive torii gate. The structure reminded him of the ancient palaces he'd seen in photos. Actually, their class was planning to visit one of those mansions today. At the front of the torii were Azazel and Serafal, both wearing a kimono. Azazel's was in muted colors of gray and brown, which gave him a very plain appearance when compared to his beautiful companion, Serafal, whose brightly colored kimono was dabbled with shades of pink and red. Naruto. Serafal waved at him with a cheerful grin. Hello everyone. You've finally arrived, Azazel said with something of a lax expression. Of course, he almost always wore an expression like that. As Naruto raised his hand to wave back, he paused upon spotting a person standing between the two. He had almost missed her because she was so short, even when compared to Serafal, who barely reached his chest. It was the blonde girl who had led the attack on them yesterday. Wasn't her name Kuno? She wasn't wearing her priestess outfit like last time. Now dressed in a light kimono with a multicolored hue, the girl looked like a princess from the Warring States era, or maybe even a princess from that video game he and Rias played sometimes. What was it called? Dynasty Warriors. Something like that. Kuno-sama. The fox yokai bowed before her leader's daughter. I have brought everyone as requested. Thank you. Please go fetch Karasu-sama. As you wish. The fox woman burst into flames and disappeared. Naruto blinked. That was impressive, actually. He wondered if he could learn that trick. It would be so cool to appear and disappear in a burst of flames. Taking a deep breath, the young princess stepped forward. My name is Kuno. I am the daughter of Yasaka, the administrator of the yokai living in Inner and Outer Kyoto. After introducing herself, the girl bowed her head to them. I am terribly sorry for my conduct last time. Attacking you without even investigating into whether or not you were responsible for my mother's disappearance was unforgivable. This girl was very proper. Naruto found himself impressed by her conduct, which had the regularity he expected from someone many times her age. Wait, just how old was she anyway? It was always hard to tell with people who weren't human since they lived so long. For all he knew, she could be 100 years old. Well, whatever. Since no one else was speaking up, Naruto walked over and placed a hand on Kuno's head. The girl's ears stiffened. He wondered if she was remember his admittedly out-of-line head petting the previous day, but Naruto ignored the thought and gently rubbed her head. Don't worry about it. I think I understand where you're coming from. If my mom had disappeared suddenly one day, and then a group of devils came to Kyoto, I would probably jump to conclusions too. Besides, this misunderstanding was cleared up, right? I don't think we should worry about what happened the other day. Kuno tilted her head to look at him, her large eyes peering at his face from underneath his hand. She really was a tiny thing. His words seemed to break the ice. Irina stepped forward and placed a hand over her heart. I feel the same way. Compassion and forgiveness is a fundamental precept for us angels. I don't have any grudge toward you. Yes. Asia clasped her hands together. I believe it's more important to seek peace with the yokai, so we shouldn't fight. I'm with Asia on this. Issei scratched his neck. Kiba chuckled. Of course you are. I don't think I need to say anything, since everything worth saying has already been said. Despite their words of reassurance, Kuno looked resistant. But, But I. Still grinning, Naruto lowered himself so he was eye level with Kuno. The girl stared at him with those big eyes of hers. They were very innocent and pure, making him realize that even if she acted mature, she was still just a kid, a child who was worried about her missing mother. He rubbed her hair some more. Kuno's cheeks flushed, but she wasn't resisting, so he assumed it was okay. You must really love your mother a lot. Oh, of course I do. Jumping to conclusions when you are so worried is natural. It's true that you caused us some problems, but no one here blames you, and you've already apologized. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Even if you say that. So this girl wasn't going to let what happened go so easily. In that case. Then how about this? Naruto offered his suggestion. I would like someone to guide me around Kyoto. Since your mother is in charge, you probably know this city well. Would you mind showing me around? Like a person drowning at sea, Kuno latched onto the suggestion he'd offered like it was a life raft. Oh, of course. I can definitely show you around. I know everything there is to know about Kyoto. In that case, I'll be counting on you. Naruto stood up, ruffled her hair one last time, and took a step back. Oh, but before that, I want you to know that I don't blame you for what happened back then. I don't want you blaming yourself either. Ah, Kuno looked down at her feet, clad in a pair of tabi socks and Geta sandals. I understand, thank you. Naruto nodded, even as he thought about giving himself a pat on the back. He could do it too. Unlike other poor, unfortunate souls who could not create shadow clones to pat themselves on the back, he was perfectly capable and willing to do that. As he pondered whether or not to actually go through with it, Azazel grinned at him. As expected of the lowly kitsune. You're very good at seducing kids. What the hell are you talking about now, old man? Asked Naruto, frowning as he raised a single eyebrow. Nothing. Azazel waved off his words, causing Naruto's frown to deepen. Oh, but speaking of kids, would you and Aiz-kun be interested in starting up your own television show? Huh, Naruto and Issei said at the same time. We haven't been able to do anything yet because everyone has been so busy, but we recently learned that you two have become incredibly popular among the children of the underworld, Azazel informed them. A lot of children are calling Issei the Oppai Dragon because he's constantly shouting about Oppai during raiding games, and they call Naruto Whiskers because of those fox-like marks on your face. Sirzex, Michael, and I have been discussing creating a TV show starring you two. Naruto and Issei looked at each other, both wondering what they should do. What do you think? Asked Issei. Well, it does sound kind of interesting. I think we should do it. Being a TV star does sound cool, but that name, Drake, is crying. We can discuss the details later, Azazel said. I just wanted to present the option. HMPH. Seraphal crossed her arms and puffed out her cheeks. Just don't expect to do better than me. Miracle Levi Tan is the most popular show in all of the underworld. After that little deviation from their original conversation was over, the group was ushered into the mansion. Naruto once more found himself impressed. While the floor was made of tiles, there was a red rug that traveled through the center. The walls were a combination of paper walls with traditional Japanese artwork and wooden posts. Likewise, the ceiling was also a combination of wood and paper wall paneling. They soon reached the great hall and Kuno took a seat. Naruto and the others sat around her. He sat between Irina and Issei, while Asia sat on Issei's other side and Kiba on Irina's other side. Seraphal and Azazel sat before them. Since this was a political function, they were basically the ones in charge. There were two other people standing on either side of Kuno. One was the fox woman from before. Naruto guessed she was Kuno's attendant. The other was a long-nosed man who looked older than the buildings they had passed on the way to this mansion. He had been introduced as the leader of the Tengu, and he apparently had a deep relationship with the Kyubis since ancient times. Stress wrinkles around his eyes and forehead told Naruto that he was sincerely worried about Yasaka and Kuno. Her cheeks red with embarrassment, Kuno lowered herself into a bow. While I am very sorry for my mistake, I would like to ask, no, I am begging you, please lend me your strength to save my mother. A sharp pain made Naruto rub his chest. It was not a physical pain, but he felt it keenly as though it were. We would love to help, Azazel said, taking the role of spokesperson. But we don't know what happened yet. Could you please tell us more about Yusaka's disappearance? Why yes, I will do that. Kuno needed a moment to compose herself, but she soon began talking, telling them about how her mother had left several days ago to meet with Sakura's messenger from Mount Meru. However, she failed to show up at the meeting place. A day passed and several yokai were sent to investigate, where they discovered one of her guards, a Karasu Tengu who had somehow survived. Fatally injured, the Karasu Tengu told the yokai investigating her disappearance that Yusaka had been attacked and kidnapped before dying. It was after this event that they started investigating suspicious individuals. According to Kuno, she had stumbled upon their group by accident and assumed they were the kidnappers. As Azazel and Seraphal spoke with Kuno, Naruto leaned over to Kiba. Hey, who is Sakura? Sakura is the ruler of the Trayastrimsa heaven according to Buddhist cosmology. He also goes by the name, Sakura, Lord of the Devas. The word Sakura means powerful and is used as an epithet for Indra, the ruler and king of the Hindu pantheon, Kiba said. Naruto nodded and began paying more attention to the conversation between Azazel, Seraphal, and Kuno. It looked like it was winding to a close. I understand why you would be suspicious of a group of angels, devils, and fallen angels entering your territory, but I can assure you that neither the underworld or heaven were involved. Azazel placed a hand on his chest. Given everything we know about her disappearance, it's more than likely Yusaka was kidnapped by members of the Chaos Brigade. Kuno frowned. I have heard that name before, but only in rumors. The Chaos Brigade are a group of terrorists who are threatening the peace of various pantheons, Azazel explained. There are 3 factions that we know of for certain: the Old Satan faction, the Hero faction, and the Magician faction. Unfortunately, we only really know about the Old Satan faction. We know a little about the Hero faction, but nothing definite, and we haven't heard a peep about the Magician faction. Azazel looked frustrated, which Naruto didn't blame him for. He bit his lip for a moment, then sighed and stood up. I know a bit more about the various factions. Sitting down beside Seraphal, Naruto gazed at Kuno. The Old Satan faction is the largest of the 3. They consist entirely of devils who believe in the old ways. They follow the descendants of the original 4 Satans. I don't believe they were involved with Yusaka's kidnapping. It's not their style. More than likely, the ones involved here are the Hero faction. What can you tell us about this Hero faction? Asked Kuno, leaning forward with an eager look. They're the 2nd largest faction, Naruto stated. Their leader is Cao Cao. I hear he is a descendant of a famous hero who shared his name. All of the faction members are people who have sacred gears, wield holy and demonic swords, or are Longinus wielders. Their top members are Cao Cao, who wields the original Longinus, the spear that was said to have pierced Jesus when he was crucified, Heracles, Jean, Georg, Siegfried, and Leonardo. All of them are descendants of heroes from the past, except for Siegfried, who is a homunculus created through alchemy. How do you know this? Asked Azazel. Because the Hero faction tried to recruit me, Naruto said. I turned their asses down flat. I have no interest in people who want to make trouble for my loved ones. Also, during the time I was imprisoned by the Chaos Brigade, I met several of their members. Cao Cao and I didn't really get along. His words caused not only Kuno, but also the old Tengu and the fox woman to stare at him in shock. They couldn't have known about any of this. Obviously, it wasn't like they'd had much contact until recently. Do you think you could help us locate and save Yusaka-sama? Asked the old Tengu leader. We, of course, will pledge our full cooperation to you. Azazel and Seraphal fell into thought for a moment, but they didn't need to think long. Of course we'll help, Seraphal said. We are trying to forge an alliance here. What kind of allies would we be if we didn't lend a hand? Thank you, the old Tengu said, relieved. Would you mind showing us what Yusaka looks like? Asked Azazel. I've never actually seen her before, so I'm not sure who we're supposed to be looking for. Of course. As the man produced a portrait from somewhere, Naruto, Issei, Irina, Kiba, and Asia crowded around Azazel and Seraphal to get a look at the woman. She was absolutely gorgeous. A blonde-haired beauty wearing a traditional Miko outfit. Naruto imagined Kuno would look like this when she grew up. Oh Oppai, Issei suddenly shouted. Look at the size of those Oppai. While Naruto snorted into his hand, Irina gave Issei an aggrieved look. Of course, she only glanced at him in disapproval. Asia puffed out her cheeks like a dissatisfied squirrel. Kun, size isn't everything. If you want breasts, then look at mine. Ah, I didn't mean your breasts are bad, Asia-chan. I really like them. But you like bigger ones better, don't you? And no, that's not it at all. I like all opie. Ignoring the byplay between Issei and Asia, Naruto looked at the portrait of Yusaka. Issei was right. This woman's bust was truly massive. Even among the women he knew, only Rias and Akino could match her in size. That said, he was more interested in the fox ears on her head. Was it wrong that seeing those ears made him want to pet her head? While we can't know where she is right now, we can be certain that the kidnappers are still in Kyoto, Azazel said as he leaned back. What makes you say that? Asked Naruto. The flow of ki in all the regions of Kyoto is stable. Azazel cupped his chin. The nine-tailed fox known as the Kyuubi is responsible for maintaining the balance of ki flowing from the different areas of this land via the ley lines. You can actually consider Kyoto itself to be a large-scale force field. If the Kyuubi ever left this land or was killed, then Kyoto would undergo potentially cataclysmic changes. Since there's no signs of that happening, it means Yusaka is still somewhere in Kyoto and unharmed. Which means the kidnappers are likely still here as well. Naruto nodded as he figured out where Azazel was going with this. Kuno looked relieved to know that her mother was probably unharmed, though it still didn't change the fact that she was in the hands of the Chaos Brigade. Given what he'd learned, Naruto was certain the hero faction intended to use Yusaka's connection to the ley lines and flow of ki for some nefarious purpose. He just didn't know what. I've already mobilized several devils who are familiar with Kyoto to search the city, Serafal added into the conversation. However, we are few in number. I'd like to recommend that several yokai join up with us and help search. Since yokai are able to sense ki more easily than us, you might be able to find clues we're likely to miss. That is a good idea, the Tengu leader said. I'll help you search as well, Naruto said. Once more, he became the center of attention. I'd rather you guys didn't get involved. Azazel sighed. However, it looks like we don't have the manpower to really refuse. Also, you guys might be the strongest fighters here. Your power is undeniable, and we're going to need that power if we have to fight against the hero faction. However, I want you all to enjoy your trip for now. I'll call upon you should anything happen that requires your power. Of course, everyone from the Grimoire peerage agreed to Azazel's request readily enough. Kuno placed her palms together and bowed to them once again. The fox yokai and the old Tengu leader also bowed their heads to them. I beg you, please lend me your power to save my mother. It seemed their conversation had finally overloaded Kuno, or maybe the relief of finally having secured more help was what had done it. Her head was bowed. Naruto couldn't see her face. However, several droplets of water were falling onto the floor. Kuno was in tears. He didn't know if it was relief, worry, stress, or a combination of everything that had happened, but seeing such a young girl in tears made Naruto's heart burn. They call themselves the hero faction, but they are no heroes. As someone who had looked up to and admired many heroes in his life, Naruto took that title seriously. Heroes protected people, heroes saved people, heroes ensured the smiles and happiness of others. The hero faction did none of that. They're just a bunch of supremacist pricks. Naruto clenched his hands into fists and quietly promised himself that he would show the hero faction the error of their ways. With his fists, of course. Devil Ninja. Naruto was lying on his bed, his belly full and his mind at ease. Everyone had finished dinner and taken a bath. The dinner had been a buffet-style dinner, and everything had looked so delicious that he'd taken to eating more than he could reasonably fit in his stomach. He'd definitely gone overboard, he would admit it. Are you going to be okay? Asked Kiba. The princely boy was sitting on the other bed, eyeing Naruto's stomach, which looked like it was housing a baby inside of it. Yeah. Naruto patted his belly. I'll be fine. Just give me a second to digest. This belly would disappear in less than an hour. His body had always been good about digesting food quickly. Deciding to go for a walk after letting himself relax on the bed, Naruto said a quick goodbye to Kiba and began strolling through the corridor. He soon found himself standing on the same emergency escape where Issei had stripped Rossweiss. Looking at the city of Kyoto at night, he briefly recalled a conversation he'd had with Rias before leaving on this trip. I should give her a call. Pulling out his smartphone, Naruto selected Rias' image from the call section and held the phone to his ear. It only rang once before someone picked up. Naruto. The familiar voice made Naruto's shoulders relax. A smile formed on his face as he recognized Rias' voice on the other end. Yeah, it's me. How are you, Rias? Is everything all right in Kuo? Yes, everything is fine. Nothing really exciting is happening here. That said, I do miss you. I wish you were here with me. I wish I was with you too. Making small talk with Rias was relaxing in ways Naruto couldn't understand. That was probably why he avoided talking about anything too heavy. Once he began telling her about everything that had happened since he had arrived in Kyoto, their conversation wouldn't be able to return to the same lighthearted tone. However, Naruto knew he couldn't put this off forever. So, listen, he began, some things happened here that I feel you should know about. Explaining what happened took a bit of time. Naruto first had to talk about how he and the others were attacked by Fox Yokai and Tengu, which made Rias nearly flip out and say she was coming to Kyoto. He only just managed to convince her not to head over. After that he went on to explain how Yasaka, the Kyuubi and leader of all Kyoto yokai, had gone missing and was presumably kidnapped by the Chaos Brigade. Of course, Naruto made sure to let her know that Azazel and Seraphol were working with the yokai to track down Yasaka's whereabouts. It sounds like there's a lot going on over there. Are you sure you don't need me come and help? You know I'll do so. I know, which is why I don't want you to come over here. You leaving Kuo right now could cause problems, and in any case, I think Kiba, Asia, Irina, and I can handle this. Besides, we're not alone. Aside from Seraphol and Azazel, we also have Rosweiss. Speaking of, have you made any progress with Rosweiss? You mean romantically? Yes. No. With everything that's happened, we haven't really had time to talk. I understand. I was just curious. And why are you asking me about my romantic inclinations with Rosweiss? Well, you know, I kind of figured she was interested in you. I thought you might have recognized that. I see. Naruto and Rias spoke for a little longer, but they eventually had to say goodnight. After pocketing the phone, he traveled back to his room, and then stopped in front of the door. Someone is on the other side. Of course, his first thought was Kiba, but if it had been his friend, then the hairs on his arms wouldn't be standing on end like this. Someone who wasn't Kiba was inside of his room. What did that mean? Were they here to attack? Were they lying in wait to ambush him the moment he walked in? Naruto frowned. He was trying to get a sense of who they were, but he wasn't good at recognizing people by their presence alone. He heard light thumping from the other side. It was getting louder. They were coming closer to the door. Naruto held his breath and waited until the last possible second before slamming the door open and leaping in. Iya! A startled scream came from whoever was inside, but Naruto was already moving. He tackled the person to the ground, landing on top of whoever it was, and then sliding a kunai into his hand and pressing it against the person's neck. What are you doing in Rosweiss? Naruto blinked several times as he finally realized who the person beneath him was. What are you doing here? Her silver hair was in complete disarray now, surrounding her body like strands of fire. She wasn't wearing her usual business suit. A traditional blue kimono adorned her body. Naruto had to admit she looked good in a kimono. He wondered if he could convince her to wear one more often. Last night, you let me use your jacket, remember? Rosweiss seemed too stunned by their sudden situation to do anything but answer him. I was just returning it. Oh, now that she had said it, Naruto could indeed see that his jacket was sitting all nice and folded on his bed. A slight sense of embarrassment came over him. I'm sorry about that. When I sensed someone on the other side of the door who wasn't Kiba, I guess I panicked. No, it's okay, but, Naruto-san. Rosweiss squirmed beneath him. Yes, can you stop touching me please? At first, Naruto thought she was asking if he could get off her. He was straddling her waist, after all, but then he soon came to realize what she meant by touching. A quick glance down from her face revealed the reason. Perhaps it had been done out of instinct, or maybe there was some other reason for it, but Naruto's hand had slid into her kimono and pushed it apart, exposing her breasts. Because kimonos weren't supposed to be worn with underwear, she was not wearing a bra. As Naruto gazed at the full, round swells of her breasts, capped with light pink nipples, he realized that his hand was placed firmly on top of her left breast. Rosweiss had a large chest. It wasn't as big as Rias's, but it was still large enough that his fingers were sinking into her chest as though it was a round pillow. He supposed that's where the name, Dirty Pillows, came from. Naruto took a deep breath as he slowly removed his hand from Rosweiss's breast. After taking another deep breath, he pulled her kimono closed so he wouldn't keep gazing at her, and then climbed off. "I'm sorry about that," he said, offering his hand to her. Rosweiss looked at his hand for a second before taking it, allowing him to slowly pull her up. "No, it's okay. When I saw that no one was inside, I just figured I would leave your jacket for you, but I shouldn't have come into your room without permission. This was my fault." He couldn't dispute that, so he didn't say anything. Neither he nor Rosweiss spoke for the longest time, making Naruto wonder if he should say something to break the ice. He felt awkward. Maybe it was because Rias had asked if he had spoken with Rosweiss about what sort of romantic progress he'd made, but his heart was thumping in his chest. It didn't help that he could still remember the sensation of his fingers sinking into her boob. "Say," Naruto began after working up his courage, "you wouldn't be interested in going on a..." Before he could say anything else, the sound of voices coming down the hall alerted them to another problem. Naruto recognized some of the voices. They were teachers. "Oh, crap, I forgot teachers sometimes come to check on students and make sure they're asleep." Naruto-san. Rosweiss was panicking. Those voices belong to Kiryu-sensei and Dojima-sensei. If they see me in here like this, I'll be in big trouble. What do I do? Naruto's first thought was shoving her into the bathroom, but then he remembered this room only had a small toilet space. What's more, it was too far for them to reach in time. This way. Grabbing Rosweiss by the hand, Naruto went over to his bed, threw the covers up, shoved Rosweiss into the bed, and then got in himself. He pulled the covers over them both, though only Rosweiss was fully covered. He almost immediately regretted his decision. Rosweiss was practically lying on top of him. A good portion of her body was pressing into his legs, and he could feel her breasts against his crotch. It was causing him to react. From the squeak she emitted, Rosweiss had noticed his boner as well. The sound of the teachers' voices were getting near. "Why is this door open?" Dojima-sensei asked. "You don't think the students left, do you?" Kiryu-sensei suggested. The two teachers entered the room and saw Naruto lying on the bed, everything up to his neck hidden underneath the covers. He tried not to squirm. However, it was proving very difficult. Rosweiss probably didn't mean to, but she was squirming around and touching him in ways that made his body feel like a live wire. "Hey, where is your roommate?" asked Dojima-sensei. "Kiba forgot something in the changing room." Naruto lied easily enough. "He should be back shortly." The man frowned but accepted his explanation. "Whatever. Keep the door closed from now on." "Yes, sir." Huffing, the two teachers closed the door behind them as they left, and Naruto breathed a sigh of relief as their footsteps grew distant. "That was a close call, wasn't it?" Naruto said to Rosweiss, but he didn't receive an answer. Rosweiss. Growing a bit concerned, Naruto peeled back the covers to find Rosweiss huddled underneath the blanket. Her face was burnt red. In fact, it could probably outshine the sun, and it wasn't hard to figure out why. There was a large pitch tent holding up his pants. She was staring at the massive bulge like it was an alien creature she'd never seen before. "Rosweiss, snap out of it." "Huh." Rosweiss blinked several times, looked at him, and then blushed to the roots of her hair. I'm sorry. I just, seeing this from so close up is, well, you know, like." No, it's no problem." Naruto waved off her apology. "You don't need to apologize. It's just that you might want to get off me now. Having such a beautiful woman on top of me is only making me more aroused." "Oh." Rosweiss seemed shocked by his words because she didn't move. Naruto wondered if he should do something about her. Should he, remove her himself? She was basically lying on top of his legs, and her face was still inches from his erection. If he hadn't been wearing pants, Naruto was sure he'd be able to feel her breath on him. Of course, just thinking like that made his dick twitch. That seemed to cause a reaction in Rosweiss, who began spouting steam from her ears. As Rosweiss stuttered to say something, the door to the room opened again and Kiba walked in. Dressed in a loose-fitting kimono, it really did look like he'd come back from the changing room. He paused upon seeing the position they were in. After taking a few seconds to study the situation further, he turned around and began walking back out. "I'll leave for a while so you two can finish whatever you're doing," he said. His words had the effect of snapping Rosweiss out of her stupor. Wait. This is just a misunderstanding. I'm a teacher. I wouldn't do that with a student while on a school field trip. Does that mean you would do it with me if we weren't on a school trip? Naruto couldn't help but ask. As Rosweiss blushed from the roots of her hair all the way down to her toes, Naruto couldn't help but enjoy seeing this woman get so embarrassed. He wondered if he was becoming a sadist. Devil ninja. Naruto sighed as he walked beside Irina and Kiba. They were on their way to Kyoto Station. "Is something wrong, Naruto?" asked Irina. "I'm fine." Naruto sighed again. "He's just depressed because of a misunderstanding that happened between him and Rosweiss last night," Kiba added. Naruto glared at him. "And who caused that misunderstanding in the first place, Kiba only laughed as though it wasn't a big deal, but Naruto felt pretty bad. Not only had the events of last night caused a huge misunderstanding between him and Rosweiss, but that morning when Rosweiss had come down for breakfast with Azazel and the other teachers, she had studiously avoided looking in his direction. Given that she almost always greeted him and the others, her not even looking at them had been the key indicator that she was probably mad. Polyamorous relationships are complicated. Rias had given Naruto the go-ahead to form a relationship with multiple women. In other words, he was being allowed to have a harem. That said, he wasn't really sure what he should be doing. He was already in a relationship with Kaneko, Ravel, and possibly even Ophis, but his relationships with Irina and Rosweiss were complicated. Irina still had feelings for Issei and Rosweiss. Well, given what happened last night, he wasn't sure she would want to talk to him for a while. Then again, do I really need to form more romantic relationships? Rias had been pushing him in that direction, but he knew she had a reason for that, something beyond simply thinking it would make him happy. However, Naruto would have been perfectly content with just Rias. He wasn't like Issei. He didn't have any dreams of being a harem king, though it looked like he was already well on his way to earning that title. "So, what was the plan today?" asked Naruto. "We're going to visit Kinkaku-ji first, and then we're heading over to Arashiyama, followed by Nijo Castle, and ending on the Kyoto Imperial Palace," Kiba answered. "Kuno said she would meet us at Kinkaku-ji." "Sounds good. I'll be relying on you for directions." "That's because you're lazy when it comes to planning." Naruto could only shrug. Kiba was right. They hopped onto a tram after reaching Kyoto Station, which took them all the way to the station closest to Kinkaku-ji. As they were sitting on the tram, Naruto noticed that Irina looked depressed. Her shoulders were slumped, there was a dejected look on her face, and she kept sighing about something. "I'll talk to her later. It's too crowded to have a conversation here." It was only a 15-minute ride from Kyoto Station to the one near Kinkaku-ji. Upon getting off, they had to walk the rest of the way, but that just gave them the chance to see more of Kyoto. The temple was surrounded by numerous paths and other buildings with a traditional Japanese aesthetic. After paying the entrance fee, Naruto and the others entered through the main gate, where they were stopped by a young girl. "Good morning." Kuno, once more dressed in her shrine maiden outfit, bowed to them. "It is good to see you three. I trust you slept well." "We did." Naruto spoke for everyone as they walked up to the young girl. Even knowing it probably wasn't proper etiquette, Naruto could not help but place his hand on Kuno's head and gently rub it. "How are you this morning?" Kuno flushed. "I am well. Thank you for asking. Are you ready to begin the tour?" "I am." Naruto gave her a big, beaming smile. "I'm excited to accompany all the famous sights in Kyoto with you." Despite her cheeks retaining their redness, Kuno puffed out her chest. "Then I shall do my best to show you all of the great sights here in Kyoto." As Naruto urged Kuno to begin the tour, his ears twitched as he picked up a conversation between Kiba and Irina. Do you think Naruto realizes what he's doing? I don't think so. Kuno seems to be below his strike zone. I doubt he even realizes how his words are affecting her. The poor girl. Naruto twitched several times as he tried to figure out what they meant by all that. Of course Kuno was below his strike zone. She was adorable, don't get him wrong, but she was just a kid. She wasn't like Kaneko, who fit the lowly archetype but was actually a high schooler, nor was she like Ophis, who was ageless and could change shape and genders at will. Actually, that reminds me. Kuno, just how old are you? I'm 13. Naruto nodded. That was below his strike zone. With that knowledge in hand, the tour soon began as Kuno showed them around Kinkaku-ji. Known as the Temple of the Golden Pavilion, Kinkaku-ji was a Zen Buddhist temple, and one of the most popular tourist attractions within Kyoto. A 3-story building on the grounds of the Rokuan-ji Temple complex, the top 2 stories of the pavilion were covered in pure gold leaf, giving it an incredibly glossy and reflective sheen that caused light refractions. It gave it a sort of sparkle effect. Not only was the structure impressive, but Kinkaku-ji was built overlooking a large pond. Naruto, Kiba, and Irina walked beside Kuno on the other side of the pond. Apparently, tourists were not actually allowed near the building itself. Naruto thought about making a shadow clone and sneaking over, but he decided not to, for Kuno's sake if not his own. Kinkaku-ji was formerly known as Rokuan-ji. Kuno began giving them a lesson on the building. It was the retirement villa of the shogun, Ashikaga Yoshimitsu, and according to his will, it became a Zen temple of the Rinzai sect after his death in 1408. This temple was actually what inspired his grandson to build Ginkaku-ji on the other side of the city several decades later. Naruto listened to Kuno's lecture on the building's history, which even he couldn't deny was interesting. According to her, Kinkaku-ji had been burned down numerous times throughout history, including twice during the Anin War, a civil war that destroyed much of Kyoto, and then once again in 1950 when it was set on fire by a fanatic monk. The group stopped near a small section of the pond. There was a stand where an old lady was selling snacks. Naruto ordered some dango from her and handed them out to the other 3. While Kiba accepted his food with a gracious smile, Irina took it with a strained look and Kuno blushed. Naruto sighed. Kuno's actions were simple enough to understand, but Irina's troubled him. Yes, I will definitely have to talk with her again. He could only assume something had happened to make her like this. I've noticed that each floor of Kinkaku-ji looks like it was built differently from the others, Naruto said as he glanced at the temple again. It was indeed as he said. The first floor was made with natural wood pillars and white plaster walls, which contrasted yet also complemented the gilded upper stories. Meanwhile, the second floor, aside from being covered in pure gold leaf, had a completely different style of roofing and the lattice work seemed different as well. The third floor was, likewise, different from the second and first floors. It also had a golden phoenix situated on top. That's because each floor was built to represent a different style of architecture, Kuno explained. The first floor is built in the Shinden style used for palaces during the Heian period, the second floor is built in the Buck style used in samurai residences, and the third floor is built in the style of a Chinese Zen hall. Naruto looked at the structure again. It's really strange to mix styles like that, but they do complement each other nicely. As Naruto spoke with Kuno, Irina frowned at the pair. For some reason, watching these two talk so easily depresses me. Kiba shrugged. Maybe you should join them. I don't think I can. Irina looked away from Kiba when he glanced at her, causing him to shrug and drop the conversation. Naruto heard it all. He wondered if Irina realized his hearing was good enough to pick up on their conversation, but he doubted it. She wouldn't have said anything if she knew he was listening in. After visiting all the little areas around Kinkaku-ji, the group hopped onto the tram again, this time traveling toward Arashiyama. Considered the second most important sightseeing district in Kyoto, Arashiyama was filled with temples and shrines, though the star attraction was definitely the famed Arashiyama bamboo grove, according to Kuno anyway. As they walked along a small path lined with simple fences made of bamboo on either side, Naruto could see why she would say such a thing. The bamboo trees were huge. They towered over them by at least several stories. Several of the trees near the fenced-off sections curved inward, forming a bit of a canopy. Once we get to the top of this hill, we'll reach the entrance to the Okochi Sanso villa, Kuno told them. Just like she said, they soon reached the entrance to the villa in question. While the villa was quite the sight, it was the surrounding gardens that really boggled the mind. Even from the entrance, they could see the way the gardens spread out like a sea of greenery. Weaving between the gardens were numerous paths for tourists to walk through. They had to pay a 1,000 yen submission fee, but, well, they were kind of rich, so 4,000 yen for each person was chump change. As Kuno led them around and talked about how the villa was formerly the estate of a famous film actor named Okochi Denjiro, Naruto made sure to include Irina and Kiba in the conversation. Irina's words from before made him realize he'd been ignoring them in favor of Kuno. He'd been trying to make Kuno feel welcome and important, since she was not only their guide but also the princess of Kyoto, but he didn't want to neglect his friends, especially Irina. His actions seemed to make Irina brighten up a little. He even got a smile out of her, which he considered an accomplishment. She hadn't smiled all day. Even that morning during breakfast, her face had remained downtrodden. It's just like I thought. Something must have happened last night. The tour of Okochi Sanso Villa took around half an hour, and at the end of the tour, they were allowed to have some Japanese sweets and a cup of hot matcha tea in the tea house near the exit. There were a few places to sit outside of the tea house. Naruto and the others sat on a long bench, with Naruto sitting between Kuno and Irina, while Kiba sat next to Irina at the end. Where should we go next? Naruto wondered out loud as he munched on a Japanese confectionery. Well, Kiba tilted his head. Our original plan was to head on over to Nijo Castle, but... Everyone glanced at Kuno, who was nibbling on her wagashi. She looked sort of like a chipmunk as she sat there. Naruto resisted his urge to act like one of those fanboys who go rapid over anime characters. Upon noticing the looks directed at her, Kuno hastily yet somehow daintily finished her meal. I can take you wherever you want. Nijo Castle, Kyoto Imperial Palace, Kozenji. Just let me know where you want to go. Kuno seemed a lot more comfortable around them because she was actually acting her age now. Her princess-like demeanor had disappeared. She seemed to be full of spirit and energy, unlike before when she had kept acting proper and dignified. Well, let's see some more sights around here first, and then we can head over to Nijo Castle, Naruto suggested. That sounds like a good idea, Irina agreed. Okay. Finally offering them a smile so bright Naruto thought he would go blind, Kuno placed her hands on her hips. Then just follow me. I'll take you to all of the great historic sites here. Thus, with their snacks and matcha finished, their tour continued. Devil Ninja. After leaving Arashiyama, Kuno took Naruto, Kiba, and Irina on a tour of Nijo Castle. Naruto had to admit that while he'd seen a good deal of buildings similar to the palaces in his old home, Nijo Castle and a few other places had some truly inspiring architecture. Seeing the large building connected by corridors with nightingale floors, the floors squeaked when you walked on them, and looking into the tatami mat-covered rooms featuring elegantly decorated ceilings and beautifully painted sliding doors was quite the sight. Once they finished visiting Nijo Castle, Kuno took them to a restaurant for lunch. According to her, this was one of the best places to eat in this particular area. They had great hot pots. The tofu hot pot here is considered a delicacy. As they sat around a table, Kuno fished the tofu out of the pot with her chopsticks and distributed them onto everyone's plates. She did so with a bright smile. Naruto hoped that meant she was enjoying her role as their hostess. Given what they had all seen yesterday, he had been worried about what kind of state this girl would be in. I wonder how long it will be before she can see her mother again. Here, Naruto. Kuno set some tofu onto his plate. He looked at her, which caused the girl to turn her head. This tofu has been simmering a bit longer than the others, so, it should be a lot more delicious. I see. Thank you. Naruto used my chopsticks to grab the tofu and popped it into his mouth. She was right. A burst of subtle yet fragrant flavor hit his tongue. It was different than the stuff he'd had yesterday. Better. This is delicious. Thanks, Kuno. Kuno was not looking at him as she nodded. Naruto thought it was adorable. This has a very Japanese flavor, Kiba said. I'm not exactly sure how to describe it, but I feel like this isn't something you can eat anywhere else in the world. It is delicious, Irina agreed as she ate. While she was eating, Irina's eyes met Naruto's. She gazed at him for barely a second before looking away. He frowned. Did she know what he was thinking? That he was wondering about when the best time to talk to her would be. He didn't think she was a mind reader. That said, it wasn't like he had been subtle. Naruto had gazed at her several times throughout the day. There you guys are, an enthusiastic voice said. Naruto and the others turned around to find Issei and Asia walking up to them alongside Kiryu, Motohama, and Matsuda. Among them, Issei seemed to be in the highest spirits, though Asia was also glowing. Naruto knew immediately. Having sex with Rias on a regular basis meant he'd become accustomed to women glowing, and Asia had that same feel about her. They had sex. He knew they were at that stage, so this didn't surprise him. However, I see. Naruto glanced at Irina to find the girl hunched over and not looking in their direction. So that was it. She saw them having sex last night. Perhaps she had gone up to see Issei the night before and instead caught him mid-coitus with Asia. He remembered their talk the other day about monogamy. That probably had something to do with it, though he wouldn't know for sure until he talked to her. Tonight. I'll talk to her tonight. Putting on a smile, Naruto greeted the other group. Hey, I had almost forgotten that you guys were planning to visit Arashiyama today too. Yeah, Issei rubbed the back of his head. We just got back from visiting Tenryuji. It was awesome. They have this really amazing ceiling with a painting of a dragon on it. While Issei was rubbing his head, Asia was clinging to his other arm, subtly pushing her breasts into him. Issei didn't seem to mind. He actually looked rather happy. Hey, who is this cutie? While Naruto and Issei were talking, Motohama had gotten close to Kuno. Naruto turned their way. The poor girl was leaning back as the guy stared at her, breathing so heavily his glasses were getting fogged up. Was this guy one of those lolicons? A true blue dude who got aroused by elementary school kids? So cute. The Kiryu girl was also getting all up in Kuno's business, hugging her and rubbing their cheeks together. Get off of me, you lowly woman. Don't act so familiar with me. Kuno did not seem to like the attention and tried to push the other girl away, but that only made Kiryu even more excited. As the girl began mumbling about how adorable Kuno's elegant manner of speech was, Naruto reached over and snatched their poor guide from her seat, and then set the girl on his lap. Sorry. He placed a hand on Kuno's head and rubbed her hair. But I'd like to ask that you not get into Kuno's personal space. He spoke with a bit of irony, well aware that he'd done just what he'd told them not to do. While Motohama's glasses flashed in anger, Kiryu placed her hands on her hips. And just what do you think it is you're doing right now? Huh. Kuno doesn't mind it when I pet her head. Do you, Kuno? Naruto looked down at the girl whose head he was petting. Kuno's cheeks were red as she squirmed around, but she didn't seem to mind at all. She turned her head to glance at him, then looked back down before slowly shaking her head. It doesn't bother me. There. Naruto nodded. You see. What kind of unfair world is this? Motohama raged. Kiryu looked like she wanted to say something, but she had enough sense to back down. Naruto grinned to himself as he continued petting Kuno's head. It was weird, but he'd always had a way with kids, even back when he was a kid himself. It was like back with Konohamaru, Moegi, and Udon. Of course, back then he hadn't been into giving head pets, but he'd still been well liked, and after he defeated Pain, he'd become even more popular with kids. There'd even been times when he'd have a bunch of rugrats crawling all over him, asking him to tell them stories of his exploits. Some of the younger children would sit on his lap when he told them stories. In some ways, you could say he'd simply grown used to this kind of situation. The group eventually settled down. Issei, Asia, Kiryu, Motohama, and Matsuda joined them for a hot pot. As everyone split off into their own conversations, Naruto let Kuno back into her seat so he could continue eating, yet before he could even start again, a new voice stole his attention. I see you kids are all enjoying the sights of Arashiyama. It was Azazel, the former general governor of the Grigori and current teacher and faculty advisor for the Occult Research Club. He was sitting at the table alongside Rossweiss. Naruto noticed right away that the Valkyrie looked annoyed. There was a vein bulging on her forehead, and her face was set in a stern frown of disapproval. Of course, Azazel was drinking sake, so that was probably it. Isn't it bad for a teacher to be drinking in the middle of the day? Naruto asked as he stood up and wandered over to their table. He heard a squawk behind him, which came from Kuno. I told him the exact same thing, Rosweiss muttered in anger. I keep telling him to act more responsibly in front of the students, but he won't listen to me. Come on, Azazel said with an irresponsible wave of his hand. I'm just taking a short break after we finished our investigation of Arashiyama. Seeing the way Azazel was lackadaisically sprawled on his chair, Naruto had a hard time believing he'd been searching for the Chaos Brigade. You know, Azazel continued, giving Rosweiss a lecherous look. You'd be much cuter if you let your hair down every once in a while. It's because you're so strict that you've never been able to find a man. Naruto winced. That was harsh. Crack. At Azazel's comment, Rosweiss slammed her fist onto the table as her face turned a unique shade of red. Getting drunk has nothing to do with finding a boyfriend. Don't mess with me. I'm perfectly capable of drinking whenever I want. Just watch. Before anyone could stop her, Rosweiss grabbed Azazel's cup and threw it back. Naruto could only stare in shock as the woman downed the whole drink like it was water. Pawa, she thash, I can drinkish just fine. Naruto palmed his face as Rosweiss, her face now a shade of pink, swayed in her seat as she glared at Azazel. One drink. Just one drink and she's already so drunk she can't even speak properly. You're drunk from just a single cup of sake. Even Azazel looked shocked, but Rosweiss poured another drink and downed it. She glared right at the fallen angel, or, well, she kind of glared off to the side. It looked like her eyes were going crossed. I'm not drunk. I've been drinking ever since I became Odin's bodyguard. This reminds me of that old man. I spent so much time taking care of him during his trips, but all he ever cared about was rubbish like ladies and boozazi and breeches. He was vulgar, completely shamalesh. All the other Valkyries of Valhalla called me the old mannish servant girl. They made fun of me. Ish all his fault. That's why I have no boyfriend. No boyfriend, no boyfriend. Wah. Great. Look at that, Azazel. You made her cry. Naruto sighed as Rosweiss began wailing. He cast a glare at Azazel, who looked like he wasn't sure what to do. Seeing the man scratching his head, all Naruto could do was sigh. I've got this, he said. You sure? Asked Azazel. It's better than letting you handle her. Rosweiss let out a squeal when Naruto scooped the woman into his arms. However, the moment she realized he was carrying her like a princess, she became somehow ecstatic. Ha ha. Naruto, Shan, you really are a great guy, aren't you? I feel just like a princess in your armish. Ah ha ha. Naruto tried to maintain his smile as the scent of booze washed over his face. He was fortunately used to drunk women. Jiraiya took him to bars all the time during their 2-year training trip, and Tsunade had been the heaviest drinker he'd ever met. Of course, Tsunade could actually hold her liquor unlike the woman he was carrying. Kuno. Naruto glanced at the young girl. I'm sorry, but could I take a rain check on the rest of our tour? I suppose. Kuno was frowning, but she still had the sense to nod. Thanks. Maybe you could give me a personal tour of Kyoto once I finish taking care of Rosweiss. AP personal tour, Kuno squeaked. Yes, I'd be happy to. I'll be in your care. Naruto said goodbye to the others and walked out of the restaurant with the drunk Rosweiss in his arms. His destination was their hotel. Of course, he had no intention of walking. After finding a deserted alley, Naruto created a teleportation circle and instantly transported himself and Rosweiss to his room. Naruto. Rosweiss was cooing. Naruto. Her face suddenly turned green. I feel sick. Sighing, Naruto said, hold on, and carried her into the toilet. He flipped up the toilet seat with his foot and positioned Rosweiss over it. He barely had enough time to move her hair out of her face before she started vomited into the bowl. A horrid stench filled the air. Naruto wrinkled his nose. Even Kurama wrinkled his nose. That smells awful. Vomit never smells good. Holding her hair in one hand, Naruto rubbed her back with his other hand, trying to soothe the woman's sickness. It was sad he didn't know medical ninjutsu. With little else to do, he waited until the woman had stopped vomiting. "Are you okay, Rossweiss?" "No," the woman muttered. She still sounded a tad drunk. "I feel ashamed." Naruto didn't tell her there was nothing to feel ashamed about. She did just get completely wasted, after all. It had also only taken her one drink to get smashed. That was kinda pathetic. However, it wasn't like this was the first time she'd done this. Once she finished throwing up, Naruto pulled Rossweiss away from the toilet, closed the lid, and flushed it. He then lifted the woman up. She couldn't stand on her own two legs and fell into him. Naruto ignored the feeling of her breasts pushing into his chest as he set her down on the toilet seat. I can't believe I did that." Rossweiss had tears in her eyes. "I must look like a mess." "A bit," Naruto admitted as he filled a plastic cup with water. "But you shouldn't worry about that right now. Here, swish this around in your mouth and spit it back into the cup." Rossweiss did as she was told, and then Naruto took the cup from her, emptied it into the sink, cleaned the cup out, and then filled it with mouthwash. He had her repeat the process several times. His hope was that the mouthwash would get rid of her vomit breath. To make sure her breath no longer smelled, Naruto cupped her face, lifted her head, and brought his face close. Rossweiss stared at him through half-lidded eyes and flushed cheeks. "Are you going to kiss me? Do you want me to kiss you?" Naruto nodded as he found that her breath no longer had the acrid stench of vomit. "Well, maybe you should let me take you on a date first." Rossweiss looked shocked. "You would date me?" "Yes. Even though I'm a 100 yen shop-loving Valkyrie who couldn't get a single boyfriend in Valhalla and can't drink to save her life. I don't see what's so bad about that. Personally, I think you're very attractive and cute." "Why, you do?" "Yes. Then, after the school trip." "What? Will you let me take you on a date after the school trip?" "Oh." Rossweiss paused for a moment, her eyes growing brighter as his words penetrated her mind. Then she blessed him with a radiant smile. "Yes, I would like that." Naruto made sure Rossweiss drank plenty of water to rehydrate after she got drunk, and then he carried her to his bed, slipped off her shoes, and laid her down on top of the covers. She was asleep before her head even hit the pillow. He stared at her for a moment, brushing her silver bangs away from her face. Then with a soft sigh, he stepped back and teleported back to the same alley he'd used to get back to his hotel room. Gotta catch up with the others. As he walked toward where he felt vague concentrations of demonic power, Naruto felt something envelope his body. It was warm and slippery, like he was being covered in a layer of mucus. He stopped walking. What was that feeling? As he looked around, Naruto was shocked to discover that all of the people who'd been walking alongside him, tourists and residents, were all gone. You'd better hurry, Naruto. I sense a strong energy radiating from where your friends are." Heeding Kurama's advice, Naruto burst into a sprint, traveling toward where his friends were. He hoped they were okay. Devil Ninja, Irina had never felt more conflicted in her life. They were walking across a traditional wooden bridge that went over the Katsura River. The 155-meter bridge was a well-known scenic spot in Kyoto. The artistic form of the bridge was an excellent match with the surrounding nature and was a symbol in Kyoto that embodied the aesthetic sense of Japan as a whole. What's more, the Arashiyama mountain was right next to the bridge, coated in red leaves that gave the entire area a unique sense that autumn was upon them. According to Kiryu, this was the Togetsukiyo Bridge. "Did you know?" Kiryu began. "According to legend, you aren't supposed to turn back in the middle of crossing the Togetsukiyo." "Why is that?" asked Asia. Kiryu chuckled. "Because if you look back while crossing the bridge, the intelligence granted to you by the heavens will be taken back. Of course, if the perverted trio looks back, it will be all over for them. They were already dumb to begin with." "Shut up." Matsuda, Motohama, and Issei shouted in unison. Unfazed by their shouts, Kiryu continued. "Another legend says that if you look back, you will be separated from your lover. This one is a bit inauspicious, but I will never look back." Irina felt her heart sink as Asia grabbed Issei's arm and gave him a tearful glance. "It's okay, Asia, it's just a legend," Issei reassured her. Asia shook her head and grabbed his arm tighter. Irina felt like an icy hand had clutched her heart in its grip. She'd known Issei and Asia were an item since her mission to reclaim the stolen Excaliburs, and she had even known that Akeno had once been a part of the equation, though something happened that caused her to separate from them. However, Irina had at one point hoped to make Issei hers. When she had been sent back to Japan, she had been ecstatic because it meant she'd be able to see him again, but upon her return, she discovered the truth. Not only was Issei already in a relationship, he wanted to become a harem king, and furthermore, he had not even realized Irina was a girl. He'd thought she was a boy this whole time. Maybe I was a bit of a tomboy, but did he really not know I was a girl? She felt a little insulted, but she also felt hurt. The boy she had loved hadn't loved her back. The boy she had thought about constantly barely even remembered her. Even worse, he was already in a relationship. I could probably join them. The thought penetrated her brain before she could help it. It was true. She could probably join Asia as a member of Issei's harem if she wanted, but that went against her Christian values. What's more, Naruto. Her heart felt like it was being split in half, with one half that belonged to her childhood crush and the other belonging to Naruto. Despite being in a relationship with several other women, Naruto had made her feel welcome, helped her out when she needed it, talked to her, and went out with her. He made time for her. There didn't seem to be any particular reason he did it. Irina just got the sense that Naruto was really nice. She remembered the conversation they had the other day. She had told Naruto that she'd given up on Issei, but that wasn't the full truth. Irina had sort of still hoped something would happen, but then she'd gone to talk with Issei last night with the hopes of maybe confessing to him, and that was when she finally saw it. Asia and Issei having sex. They hadn't locked the door, and so she'd been able to see it from start to finish. Oddly enough, seeing them hadn't been the heart-shattering experience she'd imagined it to be. After silently closing the door and pondering the matter, she realized that while part of her emotionally dead response was shock, another part was that she'd already accepted it. Also, an image of a bright smile, of blonde hair and blue eyes, of whiskers. Irina shook her head. Naruto was even more problematic than Issei. He was in a polyamorous relationship. Dating him would go against God's precepts even more. As this thought passed through her mind, a strange feeling enveloped her body, causing Irina to look up. Everyone was gone. No, not everyone. Issei, Kiba, and Asia were still present, but Kiryu, Matsuda, Motohama, and all the other tourists had disappeared. What is going on? Asked Issei. Kiba narrowed his eyes. This is... Before he could finish his sentence, a thick mist floated up from under their feet, surrounding them. Do you know what this is, Kiba? Asked Irina. Dimension lost. Kiba knelt on the bridge and tried to touch the mist with his hand. One of the Longinus. I remember hearing Azazel-sensei mention it before. Irina also knew of Dimension Lost, one of the 13 Longinus sacred gears said to have the power to kill a god. Using a special mist it created, Dimension Lost, also known as the Fog of Extinction, was able to block any attack and transport anything inside the mist to an artificially created space. Hey! A shout alerted them to the fact that they were not alone. Everyone turned to find Naruto running over to them. Are you guys okay? We're fine, Issei shouted. It looks like everyone except us has disappeared, Naruto muttered. I'm not sure what's going on, but it seems we've been forcefully transferred to an alternate dimension and sealed inside. He looked around. I'm kinda impressed. Whoever sent us here made it look like an exact replica of the Togetsukiyo. It looks like there's a Longinus user with the power to create an even stronger alternate dimension than the ones we devils use for our rating games, Kiba said as he stood back up. Kuno reached out and grabbed Naruto's jacket. Mother's dying guard reported that they had also been trapped in a mist without warning. I see. Naruto placed a hand on her head. It looks like this is a trap laid out by the Chaos Brigade. Naruto turned his head, and Irina looked in the direction he'd turned to find several figures appearing from within the mist. The one in front was a handsome man with black hair. He was wearing a school uniform, though wrapped around it was a garment that resembled Han Chinese clothing. He was carrying a spear that caused a chill to run down Irina's spine. There were several people with him. Most of them were wearing modified school uniforms. There was a boy with an emotionless expression, a handsome young man with silver-white hair, a blonde-haired and blue-eyed beauty, a tall man standing over 2 meters and decked in Greek armor, and It can't be. Irina took a step back. The last person was a young woman with chin-length blue hair, though a single fringe had been dyed green. Her brown eyes lacked any emotion. It was like they were dead. Her well-endowed body was covered in a black, skin-tight, short-sleeved unitard with pauldrons, matching fingerless gloves, and thigh-high boots. Resting on her shoulder was a uniquely shaped broadsword with a blue blade and golden edge. Irina recognized Durandal as surely as she recognized the wielder. Zenobia. No. Irina felt her heart quake. Her worst fears had come true. Cow cow. Naruto grinned from ear to ear as he stepped forward. It's been such a long time since we last saw each other. How have you been? You look quite dapper for a man who received a Rasengan to the chest. Stop calling me that. That's not even how you pronounce my name, you idiot. The boy bristled for a second but calmed down quickly, though he still looked annoyed. I'll call you whatever I want. Naruto's grin was so wide it stretched his whiskers and made him look like a fox, but then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the smile left. Irina shuddered. Tell me, are you the one who kidnapped this girl's mother? Girl. Ah, the princess of Kyoto. Cao Cao's eyes landed on Kuno, who was partly hidden behind Naruto. You are correct. I was the one who took her mother. You see, we are in the middle of an experiment and wish to have Yusaka-sama cooperate with us. At his words, Kuno bared her fangs, eyes glimmering with traces of tears. She looked positively furious. Not that Irina didn't understand why. And why are you doing this? Surely it's not because you're still trying to help Ophis. In case you haven't realized it yet, your benefactor has been living with me for the past several months. Ophis is a whimsical being. Cao Cao shrugged. I'm sure she'll return to us at some point. But you are correct. We're not here to fulfill our benefactor's wish. I have another reason for needing Yusaka-sama. Removing the spear from his shoulder, the young man pointed it at Naruto and grinned. You are a threat to humanity, Naruto. You took my Longinus to the chest and still live. Only a monster on par with Ophis herself could survive such an attack. That is why I have decided to remove you before you can do any more damage to my plans. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.